Our epic tale begins with the villain catching a fatal blade from a silver-haired beauty. He didn't even utter a single dramatic final word. Even in death, he just marveled at her absolute gorgeousness. Suddenly, the system chimed, announcing a brand new ending, unlocked naturally, starring Deculeine's glorious demise. The exhausted player behind the screen cheered, "I finally did it. 0 bugs remaining, just a flawlessly crafted masterpiece of a game." Squashing this miserable little glitch took an absolute eternity. But he finally conquered the persistent narrative nightmare, especially that headache-inducing disaster of a broken engagement questline. Meet our main character, Kim Woojin, a drained game developer slaving away at RU, the dark horse studio crashing Korea's console gaming scene. Since day one, this legendary studio dropped back-to-back masterpieces, naturally hoarding massive global fame. Right now, Woojin was violently debugging RU's upcoming AAA masterpiece, a colossal project flexing the studio's entire massive budget. Honestly, this mega release was a literal do-or-die survival situation. It would either crown them kings or bankrupt the company. The spicy twist. The storyline and brutal difficulty mutated based entirely on the player's unpredictable choices. Despite being a solo experience, the narrative depth was absolutely mind-blowing. A dynamic story driven entirely by artificial intelligence characters. This revolutionary flavor totally hooked the public's hype. Plus, the class system was insane, offering bizarre career paths like snooty aristocrats or wild monster hunters. Forget just basic knights and magic users. Players had absolute freedom to live out their wildest fantasy lives. If it hit big, they would be drowning in oceans of cash. But a flop, total studio annihilation, and absolute ruin awaited them all. Woojin had been surviving on caffeine for months, purely because of Deculein von Grahan Yukline, the game's most infuriating mid-tier boss. A massive walking bugfest of an antagonist. Yet somehow Woojin miraculously stomped out every single error blocking progress. In this patched destiny, Deculeine's tragic fate was catching a brutal death flag from his fiancée. Woojin wholeheartedly approved of this savage script ending since that trash character ruined everything he touched. Mid-crunch, a familiar presence shattered his focus. Ara, the terrifying game development team leader and his literal ex-girlfriend. They had shared 7 long years together, a legendary romance packed with heart-fluttering joyful memories. She was a relentless workaholic, he was a total slacker. Yet his desperate love unlocked his motivation, landing him this hardcore gig. Sadly, the epic romance crashed, and despite her desperate efforts, he never evolved. Ara casually checked on his debugging hell, noting his recent struggles but offering a rare, genuine smile at his victory. Woojin realized it had been 6 painfully awkward months since their split, already hearing rumors of a new guy. Awkwardly asking if things were going well with the new guy, Ara smirked at the lightning-fast office gossip, coolly replying everything was fine. He sarcastically wished them a speedy walk down the aisle, earning a swift, merciless scolding to shut up and get back to coding. Ara then dropped a bomb. The chaotic scriptwriter altered the lore and demanded massive character model redesigns out of nowhere. Woojin groaned, muttering, the entire team was an absolute circus. Speaking of cursed characters, he highlighted how Deculein was just a stepping stone boss. Any halfway decent player with a tiny drop of luck could effortlessly slaughter him early on while he was pathetically weak. Ara smirked, explaining that was the ultimate trap. Deculein scaled monstrously as the plot thickened, punishing every player choice with skyrocketing, rage-inducing difficulty the further they advanced. She casually asked if Woojin realized that villain's design was entirely modeled after him. She teased that he probably missed it while modeling, considering their uncanny, slightly creepy resemblance to one another. Defending himself, Woojin claimed he barely knew the eccentric writer. Ara laughed, firing back that their matching trash personalities were exactly why the villain was eternally doomed. Woojin's jaw dropped. Was his ex really comparing his entire existence to a doomed, arrogant villain? Then Ara sharply asked for his true thoughts on the playtest. Woojin admitted the gameplay was crazy fun, but dread consumed him since the studio's entire survival rested heavily on this single massive release. Ara waved off his panic confidently, stating the epic trailer already broke the internet, making a total flop practically impossible at this point. Suddenly, Woojin spotted a sleek car pulling up outside cheekily, asking if that was her shiny new boyfriend arriving. He nudged her to hurry up, joking that leaving the poor dude freezing in the dead of night was just plain cruel of her to do. Ara hesitated for a split second, but coolly agreed it was fine and decided to head out. Exchanging awkward goodbyes, the grueling night dragged on. Hours later, a heavily caffeinated Woojin went back to double-check the arrogant villain character Deculein. He stared seriously, wondering if the chaotic scriptwriter was aggressively trolling him. This cursed villain possessed 6 conflicting traits. Having both prodigy and mediocre was completely absurd. His lore claimed he was fiercely worshipped as a childhood genius. Hailed as a magical prodigy, yet secretly harboring a pathetically mediocre reality. What a toxic cocktail of overwhelming pride. Imagine peak noble arrogance, infinite snobbery, and zero empathy. Yep, that crafted humanity's absolute worst trash personality. Barely even human. Deculine's rap sheet. A glorious combo of germaphobe, elitist jerk, and raging control freak, the ultimate walking red flag. Developer Kim Woojin originally figured this guy naturally leveled up as the plot thickened. Nope, at every single story arc's finale, he just ended up surrounded by haters and met a totally brutal doom. Since this villain was basically his own twisted self-insert, Woojin debated sneaking in some hidden top-tier buffs. He spotted a character trait literally called understanding. Wait, does that mean galaxy brain intellect or just basic human empathy? He smirked at the screen. Why not make this pixelated jerk way more lovable than his actual real-life self? Boom. He slapped on understanding, plus absurd cheat codes. Filthy, rich god-tier senses, the Midas touch, and literal abs of steel. But hold on a second, Woojin realized that was way too overpowered. Total overkill. Villains should never get the protagonist treatment. Smash that undo button. He instantly deleted all those shiny cheat skills. Suddenly, a massive error window crashed his screen. Plot twist. It was just a cheeky direct message from the head writer. The chat pinged. Modifying a character model. Nah, just lurking in spectator mode, the writer teased. Totally baffled, Woojin typed back. Bro, just come over to my office. Let us smash these bugs together. The writer cryptically replied, look out your window. Woojin blinked, squinting at the boring sky, completely clueless. Wait. What the heck? A raging apocalyptic storm was suddenly brewing. Why is there a massive swirling void in the clouds? Flash-searing lightning blinded him, his senses spun wildly. Where in the world did he just get dragged to? Agony exploded through his brain. A mysterious voice echoed, keep your guard maxed out. Surviving Deculein is nightmare difficulty. The silence felt eerie right now. But tragic disaster was literally one blink away. That villain was a walking wild card with insane potential. He should probably be grinding his stats right now, because he was absolute scum. Cut to reality. Our newly transmigrated villain was violently jolted awake by ear-piercing shrieks. His eyes snapped open. A frantic maid was blocking a fierce woman. Get up, you lazy bum, she roared at him. Are you even human? Woojin now trapped as Deculein rubbed his temples. Yep, it had been days since he hijacked this meat suit. Yet this entire bizarre transmigration situation still felt like a total fever dream. The angry lady kept screaming, you are trashing our glorious family name all because you are crying over some girl. She slammed the paperwork onto the floor. Do your job or get permanently fired from your cushy aristocratic gig. Flashback to exactly 1 week ago. A blinding cosmic flash, and suddenly he woke up piloting this ridiculously handsome but cursed avatar, putting the puzzle pieces together. Holy crap, he was literally trapped inside his own unreleased game. The familiar assets proved it. The ultimate tragedy. He possessed a walking dead man. This dude was mathematically guaranteed to die in every single route. Congratulations, developer Woojin. You are now the ultimate trash tier antagonist, Deculein von Grahan Yukline. A whole 7 days of survival mode. Just him waking up every morning inside the ridiculously lavish Grand Yukline estate. At first, he tried to pinch himself awake, but the cold, hard reality of breathing forced him to accept this insane fate. Was this some twisted developer purgatory? Nope. He was absolutely certain he was playing the villain in his own unfinished project. Not even the final boss. Deculein was just a pesky mid-game obstacle designed to get stomped by players. A literal magnet for hatred. In every storyline, he was the nation's public enemy #1, stirring up maximum chaos. Major plot hole, though. He had zero clue what chapter he was in. He had massive mana stats, but absolutely no idea how to cast a spell. His gamer brain panicked. Out of thousands of playtest runs, this glorious idiot survived in exactly one single scenario. Talk about terrible game design. He was literally coded just to act arrogant, flex a bit, and brutally expire. He squinted at the trashed documents. Wait. Imperial University. Authored by Professor Deculein. It was a literal textbook on beginner magic fundamentals. His brain went into deduction mode. The fiery woman who chucked this at him. Definitely his fierce half-sister Yeriel. She basically ran the family while he slacked off, their sibling rivalry utterly toxic. And that girl he was supposedly weeping over, it absolutely had to be Julie. The same Julie who literally murdered his character in half the playthroughs. Some messy romantic drama was definitely threatening his cushy tenure. Oh right, he was a highly respected tenured magic professor. What an absolute joke. Checking the calendar, sheer panic set in. Today was the day he had to actually teach a live class. Time to suit up. Even with zero teaching experience, he had to fake it till he made it. Escaping his death flags required gathering every scrap of intel, but the real game changer, that glowing system window. To survive this death trap, he had to become an absolute VIP. His first side quest, surviving a university lecture, the prize, sweet currency for the system cash shop. Between farming coins and dealing with Uriel, a walking death flag, he needed to act fast. One mistake meant game over. That cash shop was his ultimate lifeline. But first, how the heck would he fake an elite academic lecture? Normally panic would set in. But this villainous body packed the absolute cheat skill, understanding burn some mana and boom, instant genius. Back in the real world, he patched this trait into Deculein himself. His goal, making the scumbag villain slightly tolerable. Since this late-game innate ability was a developer secret, it definitely had to pack some wildly overpowered hidden perks. Stepping into a sunlit mega wardrobe, he stared at the luxurious suits. This lavish setup felt totally alien to his average guy's soul. Yet wearing them felt terrifyingly natural. It was like his mind and this villainous body had perfectly synced up. As if he was born as Deculein. Normally, his inner salaryman would have totally suffocated in this stiff aristocratic getup. But now, this high society fashion did not just look elegant, it actually felt perfectly comfortable. The real culprit, his passive character traits, intimidation and dignity, were working overtime. His snobby aesthetic sense and environment screamed the truth. This intensely pretentious villain was his actual reality now. Breaking character was impossible. This elite etiquette was literally hardwired into his DNA. Even the most annoying noble habits felt like second nature. Whatever it took to gather survival intel, he would play the part perfectly. Stage fright before the big lecture zero. Thanks to his ingrained arrogance, he was brimming with obnoxious, unshakable confidence. But internally, he was still Kim Woojin, just your perfectly normal, handsome corporate worker with a very decent job. Sure, people called him a boring, lazy bachelor back then. But that mundane reality was his precious anchor to sanity. He could not drop his guard for a second, not in this twisted fantasy realm where everything desperately wanted him dead. Sliding into a hyper-luxury magic car, his modern mind was completely blown. He briefly recalled an annoying guy related to it but hit delete on that memory. Inside the ridiculously plush cabin, a tiny, visibly trembling kid was glued to the passenger seat. She nervously handed him paperwork. Wondering if this pint-sized girl was his assistant, he smoothly asked if she studied magic. She squeaked out, yes, terrified, reminding him she was his apprentice for 3 whole years. He smoothly played it off as dry humor. He assumed the papers were just basic lecture notes. Nope. It was a completely pre-written word-for-word cheat sheet for him. The original Deculein was such an arrogant, talentless fraud. He literally forced someone else to write his entire academic presentation. This poor kid slaved away for him. Feeling guilty, he gave genuine praise, leaving the poor girl absolutely bewildered. Even the driver almost crashed from shock. Brushing it off, Deculein smoothly told the kid to take a well-deserved nap. Suddenly, his stomach violently churned. Just from praising someone. What kind of astronomically twisted personality did this villain actually have? That was Deculein's absolute cursed ego. A literal allergic reaction to kindness, which had struck him earlier too. The driver announced their arrival. Stepping out with villainous grace, he gazed up at his new daily grind, the majestic Imperial University. Searching his newly acquired memories, he realized the venue was not a boring classroom. His stage was a literal 5-star hotel ballroom. Inside that massive chandelier-lit hall, the air vibrated. The students were absolutely buzzing with hype for the great Deculein, the absolute magic genius. Upon his entrance, the room fell dead silent. Introducing himself as Deculein von Grahan Yukline, he officially kicked off the grand lecture. Fangirls whispered about his breathtaking intellect, but one girl sat trembling with pure rage. She had finally found the damned Deculein, her father's sworn mortal enemy. Dark memories surfaced. 3 years ago, her father tragically ended his own life after decades of grueling, endless research. His spirit was utterly shattered upon discovering his life's magnum opus had been ruthlessly stolen, and the vile thief who stole it, he was now globally worshipped as the absolute genius of spell interpretation. The very man standing arrogantly before her eyes. The damned Deculein. Powerless and ruined after her father's passing, she lost absolutely everything despite hailing from a once proud noble bloodline. Her family's estate, their grand territory, their immense wealth, everything vanished. She was left completely abandoned on the streets. Fueling her soul with pure vengeance, she ground herself to the bone. Her ultimate reward, admission to the Imperial University right into her target's personal domain. These clueless students worshipped a total lie. They had zero idea that Deculein's legendary magic skills were just a pathetic facade. This stolen glory rightfully belonged to her ruined father, whose noble house was completely destroyed. How could he stand there so shamelessly stealing the spotlight meant for her beloved father? She fiercely wanted to expose his lies and end him, but for now, she had to bite her tongue and plan the ultimate takedown. Her revenge needed to be absolutely flawless. Just then, Deculein finally kicked off his lecture. He proudly reintroduced himself as the top-tier senior professor of the university's prestigious magic tower. He smoothly explained that as a monarch-level mage, the fourth highest rank in existence. He was specially assigned to grace them all with this highly exclusive lecture. Honestly, since they made it this far, he assumed they already knew his legendary name. He elegantly began stating that magic is broadly split into 3 core properties and 9 categories. The properties' origin for the absolute magical foundation elements for the physical composition, and the crucial link that ties it all beautifully together into a perfect flow. The categories covered everything from invocation, spiritual destruction, support, manipulation, utility, enchantment, harmony, and finally specialization. Inside, Deculein was doing a happy dance. The lecture was going perfectly. Truthfully, this was his very first time teaching, let alone lecturing on advanced magic theory, a subject he barely even understood in the slightest. Sure, he was essentially just reading off a script, but his overpowered cheat skill let him completely master all the content he was currently teaching. Plus, his passive intimidation and sheer dignity forced the entire class to pay absolute attention. His absolute elitism trait completely blocked out any stage fright, making his arrogant teaching style look incredibly natural. Ironically, these villainous characteristics genuinely made him the ultimate professor. He smoothly continued, explaining how mana's usage changes drastically depending on the specific body part where it is actively stored. Mages usually store it in their brains where visualizing spells is easier. Knights, however, fiercely keep it in their hearts to forcefully pump raw mana throughout their body. Finally, the abdomen powerfully houses the true energy center. It's the most practical mana storage for absolutely everyone, seamlessly connecting internal energy to the external world. His main point was actually quite beautifully simple. Hard work definitely matters, but if your talent is garbage, careful selection and absolute focus are mandatory. He was basically giving himself a sad pep talk. Deep down, Deculein knew his own talent was pure trash. Although his mana sat at 3,375, he knew a much more important main character out there, started with a ridiculous 30,000. He gracefully wrapped up, stating that was all for today, but paused to drop one final dramatic line. He sweated internally, knowing the real Deculein would never do this, heavily regretting the terrifying final line he read. He boldly asked for questions. Absolute silence. He internally cheered for his smooth escape until a sudden, annoying voice stopped him dead in his tracks. It was the hooded girl who absolutely despised Deculein. She demanded answers about a terrifying, mysterious spell found in the dorms last night. Terrified rumors were already calling it the literal devil's work. She boldly challenged the genius of spell interpretation for his thoughts. Masking his panic, Deculein coldly asked if she was really from the magic tower. Flustered, the girl immediately asked why. He arrogantly declared that true tower members formally announced their affiliation before speaking. Therefore, he would absolutely not accept any ridiculous questions from an unmannered child. As she angrily retorted, he internally cried, "Sorry, kid, but I absolutely will not do that." Panic hit him. Understanding the script had brutally drained his energy. He only had 20.5 mana left, having just burned 1,300 to comprehend that lecture. If he used that spell again, who knows what fatal thing would happen. The entire class erupted into mocking laughter, making the furious girl even angrier at the smug professor. Just before he casually escaped, she fiercely shouted, "Wait!" She sneered that the tower mages completely failed to interpret it, but surely the grand professor could effortlessly identify the exact category of that totally unknown spell. She boldly manifested a massive spell right there in class, formally challenging him to perfectly interpret it. Just comprehending the magic brutally slashed Professor Deculein's remaining mana down to 360. She explained that the dorm novices were completely stumped after analyzing it all night, practically begging to know if he could drop even a tiny hint. Deculein coolly replied that further advice was completely unnecessary, stating it was clearly just a basic magical barrier from the enchantment category. He casually revealed, someone tried to crush those students using that barrier, declared the class officially over, and smoothly walked right out. And just like that, he successfully survived his terrifying university lecture mission. Later in the cafeteria, the grumpy girl aggressively chewed her food, angrily ranting that the professor was an absolute imposter. She obsessively plotted to expose his total lack of skills and utterly destroy his supposedly fraudulent interpretation of that spell. Instead, she had just been publicly humiliated and called an unmannered idiot over a simple missing introduction. Still, she grinned maliciously. Calling that spell an enchantment definitely meant he was caught totally off guard. Enchantments were brutally complex and absolutely required a physical medium. How could it possibly be an enchantment spell? With 0 mediums nearby, she totally had him. Ephraim scoffed. That flashy magic circle from last night, she was absolutely certain it was just a cheap copy-paste job. But what started as total annoyance quickly turned into a hardcore study session for the magic rookies. Suddenly, a classmate sprinted over, gasping for air. "Ephraim," she cried. "That crazy spell from yesterday, it was actually a master tier restructured barrier." Ephraim's brain practically short-circuited. "What? The fangirling continued. She praised Ephorine's insane guts for questioning the terrifying professor when everyone else was shaking in their boots. Wait, are you seriously telling me that was a barrier? The girl nodded vigorously. Professor Deculein is a total genius, she gushed. He spotted a mediumless enchantment instantly. Impossible. Ephorine was stunned. The girl promised to sneak Ephorine's name onto the official report. Forcing a polite smile, Ephorine muttered a stiff thank you. But internally, she bet her life it was just dumb luck. Great. Her epic rebellion had totally backfired, only boosting that arrogant professor's street cred. She fiercely gripped Deculein's syllabus, understanding advanced grade elemental magic. Time to survive his hellish semester. Know your enemy to crush your enemy. She swore to arm herself to the teeth before stepping into his academic battlefield. Operation Expose the Fake was a go. Meanwhile, Deculein casually strolled the halls, relieved his survival mission was almost cleared. That situation almost spiraled into an absolute disaster. Staring at that headache-inducing formula, his system's auto-comprehension skill triggered a blindingly complex magic circle. Just one glance. Boom. His mana pool was draining like a leaky bucket. He was utterly clueless about its true nature. Even with double his current mana decoding, that monster spell would be an absolute nightmare. Still, he sighed in relief. Crisis averted. But suddenly a chilly voice cut through the air. It has been a while. Deculein froze. Snow-white hair, ice-cold eyes. He knew that stunning face perfectly, mostly from staring at his gaming monitors. Enter Julie von Frieden, his in-game fiancée, a top-tier selectable character, and a future powerhouse at the absolute peak of knighthood. Talk about an unexpected spawn point. Playing it cool, he simply nodded, hello. Julie's eyes narrowed dangerously. How can you be fine? After shattering the promise you made just last week. Promise. What promise clueless Deculein tried to casually sidestep, her blaming his highly convenient amnesia. Running away again, she snapped, blocking his path like a raid boss. Yeah, she was definitely not letting him escape. Sweating bullets internally, Deculein played the sick card. I was terribly ill, you see. Would you mind refreshing my memory on this little promise? You swore to confess your pathetic lies, she hissed. To reclaim your honor and stand by my side even if the entire world burned down. Trusting you was a massive mistake, Julie spat, pointing firmly at the exit. Deculein blinked, absolutely unfazed. All right, then he shrugged and casually walked right past her. Julie gritted her teeth. Their engagement was nothing but a cold political business deal. Flashback to a fancy dinner, nobles hyping Deculein as a magic prodigy while praising her as the legendary knight of the century. If these two overpowered geniuses united, it would be the ultimate political and genetic jackpot. With the powerhouse Yukline and Frieden families backing it, nobody dared to object, not even them. She treated it as a knight's duty, completely devoid of romance. But eventually, both families uncovered the ugly truth. Deculein's so-called god-tier talent was one massive scam. He probably brainwashed himself, faking his way into a cushy professor job as a spell interpretation genius. And after one disastrous incident, his glorious fake winning streak completely crashed and burned. Naturally, both elite families shoved the massive scandal under the rug. Gossip is deadly in high society. Tied down by cutthroat politics, revealing this embarrassing glitch in their lineage was absolutely forbidden. But Julie's knightly pride was screaming, a loveless marriage, fine. But letting a total fraud trick the entire world, unacceptable. Driven by righteous justice, she had confronted him, and the coward had actually agreed to come clean. She felt a flicker of hope back then. But now, he was still the exact same lying scumbag. Meanwhile, chilling in the Imperial University's magic tower, Deculein marveled at the game's most insanely elite campus. Out of all the departments, the magic faculty was the absolute ultimate final boss stage. To a Korean like him, getting in was like acing national medical school exams, with the tower acting as the ultimate university hospital. The devs really went crazy here. The map layout was an absolute 10 out of 10 masterpiece. A ridiculously massive campus, flawless high-definition gardens, and major Ivy League American University vibes. Deculein sighed. If he wasn't currently fighting for his life, a campus stroll would be lovely. Suddenly, a figure charged right at him. False alarm. It was just his tiny, incredibly clumsy assistant frantically apologizing while scattering papers everywhere. She gasped out that it was urgent. Squinting at her dramatic entrance, Deculein dryly asked if she thought she was Zorro. The kid blankly replied that her name was Alan. They looked exactly the same, but she fiercely insisted they were completely different. Back in his luxurious office, Deculein raised an eyebrow. Was this her so-called life or death emergency? Alan nodded vigorously, slamming down the freshman mage sponsorship list for the year. To Deculein, this magic tower felt exactly like a modern research lab. No massive funding, no magical breakthroughs. Every year, elite professors threw their money at the most promising rookie mages. Scanning the documents, one name practically blinded him with a golden game-like glow. Talk about overpowered potential. The first glowing trait was Born Magnate. Basically, an absolute financial genius who could sniff out mountains of gold. Mix that with sharp perception, and his eyes could literally read hidden stats, mana cores, and elemental affinities like an open cheat book. Deculein smirked. These god-tier traits combined perfectly. Those glowing names were walking treasure chests, though some held way more value than others. And right there, on the list, go, was Ephorine Luna. The original game developer literally designed her as a main character. She had main character plot armor written all over her. Just one tiny problem. Her father had died, completely because of Deculein. Oops. Surprisingly, Ephorine had zero sponsors. When Deculein asked why, Alan nervously whispered that the other nobles were too terrified to approach her. Definitely his fault. Plus, she was a total wild card who learned magic all by herself before even joining the academy. Her monstrous talent was completely undeniable. But at the end of the day, she was fated to destroy him. So logically, he had to do the exact opposite of what she expected. In the original game timeline, he was doomed to die a miserable death. Armed with the villain's fate debuff, the entire universe practically begged for his execution. But screw destiny, what doesn't kill you makes you a total boss. In the game, he had died in a million pathetic ways. Stabbed through the heart, poisoned tea, blown to absolute pieces. You name the route, he met a brutally hilarious end. To shatter these death flags, he had to act completely out of character. The original scumbag, Deculein, would never do this. He boldly signed the sponsorship paper, tossing it to Alan for official processing before grabbing a massive stack of magic books. Now completely alone, he faced his most terrifying enemy yet. He needed absolute mountains of cash to survive. Throwing money at his problems could cancel out half his death flags. Sponsoring overpowered prodigies was just step one. Still, wealth couldn't block a sword. The world was literally crawling with overpowered main characters plotting his bloody murder. There was only one true cheat code to surviving this nightmare difficulty world. He had to become overwhelmingly strong. The only hilarious catch, Deculein's magical talent was absolutely trash tier. Remaining this week meant becoming stepping stone fodder. Without a serious power-up, his respawn counter would just keep ticking up. Thankfully, the villain had left behind one ridiculous loophole of his unique traits. He couldn't master all four elements like a true hero, but he dominated earth and fire. His core specialty, absolute manipulation. By slamming earth and fire together, he forged pure metal. Combining this with his upgraded Midas touch trait, pure profit. Infusing magic into metal unlocked an epic skill. The flying metal sword basically weaponized telekinesis on steroids. Telekinesis was usually mocked as a joke magic class. But who needs raw mana when you have ridiculously expensive metal? He could just buy his way to victory. Mastering object manipulation was the key. Smirking at a dusty grimoire, he decided to test drive this villain's body. He pumped his mana into the ancient pages. Instantly, a massive, glowing magic circle erupted beneath his feet. A storm of raw mana trashed the office, forcibly downloading decades of magical theory straight into his brain. Panting and completely exhausted, he lifted a finger. A pen floated effortlessly. This basic telekinesis was literally hardwired into his muscles like an innate buff. Wielding skills he had only seen through a computer screen felt completely insane. Yet, for this body, it was as easy as breathing. If he grinded these base stats high enough, unlocking advanced telekinesis would be an absolute breeze. He was finally inches away from grabbing real-world breaking survival power. What next? Staring at another mountain of books, an insanely reckless idea hit him. Why not tattoo the entire magic circle directly into his flesh? Because, in this brutal fantasy world, the bigger the magic circle, the more devastating the destruction. So instead of just targeting his brain or heart, he would use pure comprehension to map his entire body. His insane plan, tattoo magic circles across his entire body to boost his telekinesis, risking absolute physical backlash. Thankfully, his iron body trait blessed him with monstrous physical stats and innate durability. With top-tier physical potential, he bet his life that his vessel could endure the brutal toll. A purely suicidal stunt made possible only by his overpowered traits. Down to just 800 mana, Deculein slammed his hand onto the grimoire. Instantaneously, raw magical knowledge hijacked his bloodstream. Pure agony erupted. It felt like his muscles were shredding and bones turning to dust. An absolute symphony of torment. Yet his dignity trait suppressed every scream. Drained to his last drop of mana, his body shivered in silent exhaustion. The process abruptly failed. His mana pool had completely hit rock bottom. But it was not a total loss. A pristine magic circle now burned brightly into his shoulder. At this grueling pace, fully converting his body would take exactly 2 weeks. Fast forward 1 month to the first day of class. The students arrived only to find a cryptic sign. It read, "The professor wishes to evaluate your abilities. You may use absolutely any element to produce results. The room buzzed with confusion. Was this arrogant professor seriously ditching them to self-study? While others panicked over his mysterious expectations, Ephraim scoffed at his classic irresponsible behavior. She cursed his laziness out loud. What kind of trashy mentor just drops a sign and vanishes? Suddenly, a random girl roughly bumped past Ephraim. Ephraim whipped around, instantly recognizing Sylvia von Josipin Iliad, but Sylvia just shot her a dead-eyed stare and walked away. Did this brat seriously forget her? Later, Ephraim focused entirely on a delicate construction spell. She masterfully shaped a miniature magic tower, absolutely certain her eyes had not deceived her. That was definitely the Iliad heir. 10 years ago, her arrogant family brought troops to threaten Ephraim's underestimated father. Was Sylvia really playing dumb about their bitter past? Crash. Out of nowhere, her beautiful tower was mercilessly crushed. Her mana was literally being hijacked. Sylvia was greedily draining it to construct a massively overpowering tower of her own. Furious, Ephraim screamed, "What the hell is your problem? You just demolished my hard work." Sylvia did not even flinch. Ephraim gritted her teeth, wondering if this psycho girl was purposely treating her like absolute heir. Snapping completely, Ephraim confronted her face to face. "Why are you acting like you do not know me?" Their families had a literal blood feud. Clearly, this rich princess was just terrified of Ephraim's monstrous talent. Sylvia coldly replied she was a nobody. Ephraim's jaw dropped at the sheer disrespect and informal tone. Sylvia smirked. "I do not know you, but I know your father. That pathetic, reckless noble. I heard the fool finally died." Ephraim's vision instantly went red. The classroom gasped in pure horror. "How dare you?" Ephraim roared, charging forward as lethal magic sparked violently in her hands. Kaboom. A catastrophic explosion erupted, sending shockwaves of terrifying power straight through the academy hall. As the thick smoke cleared, panicked students frantically checked for casualties. Ephraim violently gripped Sylvia by the hair. "Say one more word about my dad and I will end you right here." But wait. The crowd pointed at a terrifying gaping black hole forming behind Ephraim, chilling even her to the bone. A literal void had birthed. The violent clash of their raw mana was mercilessly devouring the room's energy. Absolute panic set in. This unnatural anomaly was totally going to detonate. Students scattered like ants. Ephraim froze, realizing this blast would slaughter everyone present. The detonation triggered. Ephraim desperately threw up a shield. But eerie silence followed. Something had completely nullified the impact. Every single deadly piece of shrapnel hung frozen in midair. The savior, Professor Deculein himself. How did he even get there? With a flick of his wrist, his overwhelming magic casually redirected the lethal storm away. The sheer, absolute authority of his telekinesis left every single jaw dropping to the floor. These magic nerds knew true mastery when they saw it. It was a breathtaking cinematic display of absolute dominance. Everyone in the room had to admit that magical flex was absolutely breathtaking. Sweeping the scattered metal into a massive scrap pile, he totally canceled the day's lesson. The crowd was immediately dismissed. Well, everyone except the absolute menace who started this whole chaotic mess. Ephraim braced herself, feeling the absolute worst-case scenario approaching. Cut to the interrogation room. A guy strutted in announcing the big bosses, Deculein and the director, had arrived. This tryhard was Relin, a totally basic professor from the support department. Beside him hovered Latran, the spiritualism professor. Raylan immediately kissed up loudly, declaring that truly elite mages are always perfectly on time. Flanking Deculein was Director Adrienne Sicilian herself. Flashing a bright smile, she cheerfully thanked the tense crowd for showing up. She pointed out the sheer absurdity of the sudden disaster. A total mess even the all-knowing Deculein missed. Relin barked out who in their right mind actually dared to lay a finger on the Iliad's golden child. Another snobby professor chimed in, whispering, "It was just some pathetic nobody without a noble house." Latran fired up the hype train, totally gushing over how flawlessly Deculein crushed the chaos before it exploded. Total fanboy behavior right there. Deculein mentally rolled his eyes at the shameless bootlicking. With these high society snobs running the show, the rigged guilty verdict was basically already carved in stone. In the red corner, Sylvia, the totally untouchable princess of the ultra-powerful Iliad house. The opponent was Ephraim, a doomed fallen noble who could barely even defend herself. The bias was painfully obvious, so he desperately needed to flip the script. Suddenly, his eagle eyes caught a sinister glitch, a dark, chilling death flag oozing from Ephraim that only his overpowered senses noticed. Warning. The villain's death flag activated. Translation. One single wrong choice here would totally derail the entire plotline and literally send him straight to a brutal premature game over. And so, the super tense disciplinary showdown officially kicked off. Relin immediately started roasting Ephraim. He demanded why they brawled during a sacred lecture, screaming that without Deculein's epic save innocent bystanders could have been totally wrecked. He demanded a motive, but Ephraim stubbornly bit her lip. Pressed for answers, she glared up at the imposing Deculein, flashing back to the exact moment that snobby Sylvia mercilessly trashed her late father's honor, spilling that dark secret right in front of Deculein's face. Yeah, absolutely not happening. Relin scoffed, asking if this silence was some sick joke, or just her pathetic inferiority complex acting up. He sneered, telling her to brutally accept the massive status gap between trash and a golden star like Sylvia. Finally, the biased judges gave Sylvia the floor. Playing the victim, she claimed she totally just accidentally smashed Ephraim's magic project, sparking the whole fiery brawl. The snobs gasped. Was that tiny mistake really the only trigger? How dare a filthy, titleless commoner react with such insane audacity? They ruthlessly trashed her lack of basic manners. They screamed for immediate expulsion, claiming their elite prestigious academy absolutely could not tolerate such a wildly violent delinquent. A soul-crushing chill completely swallowed Ephraim. Listening to the toxic insults, the harsh reality hit. Absolutely nobody had her back. In her mind, she cursed Deculein's name, blaming that absolute monster. The director clapped her hands, noting the jury was suspiciously unanimous. But wait, before dropping the hammer, the legendary Professor Deculein had to speak. Ephraim squeezed her eyes shut, totally accepting her tragic expulsion. But suddenly, Deculein's cold voice cut through. Did they actually buy that innocent accident excuse? Staring down Sylvia von Josephine, his piercing gaze demanded the truth. Was she absolutely positive her little slip-up was purely innocent? The entire room, completely blue-screened, Deculein coldly dropped the bomb. Sylvia had the overwhelming power to stop the clash instantly, but she totally just watched. Perhaps her hyped-up legendary genius talent was just a massive fraud. If she was truly that overpowered, why on earth didn't she flex it? Sylvia instantly folded like a cheap chair. Bowing her head, she confessed she let the chaos burn, just to ensure Ephraim caught a brutally severe punishment. Ephraim's jaw dropped. Why did the arrogant princess surrender so fast? More importantly, the messy incident completely wasn't her fault after all. Professor Latron totally panicked, protesting that Deculein was brutally grilling the poor victim instead of the crazy aggressor. Deculein just smirked coldly. If they really wanted to play the blame game, then he, the genius who designed the chaotic lesson, should take the fall. Latron violently backpedaled, sweating buckets as he awkwardly stammered that his words were totally taken out of context. Ephraim's brain short-circuited. Was this absolute villain actually fighting the biased staff just to act as her personal shield? The director clapped, shattering the tense awkwardness. She cheerfully declared that kids literally level up by throwing hands. Punishing them now would be totally unfair since both were still fresh-faced academy newbies. Crushing their fiery passion right at the starting line would be an absolute tragedy. Boom. The verdict was in 0 punishments for anyone, and both shell-shocked girls were totally free to go. Escaping certain doom, Ephraim felt completely dizzy. Why on earth did the villainous Deculein actually step up to save her? While leaving, Relin shamelessly kept kissing up to Deculein, totally ignoring how the boss had just ruthlessly wrecked his argument. But wait, just before the dramatic exit, a voice called out. It was Ephraim trembling. She demanded the ultimate truth. Did this monster actually remember the absolute hell he put her and her father through? Deculein simply smirked. Her glaring suspicion was totally expected. Ephraim hesitated. Pushing the daddy issues might poke the arrogant professor's temper, getting her unceremoniously kicked out of the academy. Then again, if this jerk completely forgot her old man, she would be absolutely furious. Stop asking pointless questions and do not waste your precious potential, he declared. Then he dramatically swished out of the room, leaving her totally dumbfounded. He definitely knew about her dad. Why else would he drop such suspiciously specific dialogue? Still, the guy actually helped her. Was it some twisted guilt for completely wrecking her life? Was it bloody compensation for her father's death, or just sheer pity? Either way, she let out a massive sigh of relief. At least the villain remembered his sins. Meanwhile, Deculein checked his system. Mission clear plus 2 sweet survival points. Cut to Sylvia riding home with daddy dearest Deculein von Iliade, the big boss and rank 3 spiritual mage. He gently patted his daughter, telling her to completely scrub that annoying rival girl out of her elite aristocratic brain. Sure, Ephraim had raw talent, but the poor girl was tragically late to the party. Despite that, Sylvia was deep in thought. Cue the flashback to 10 years ago, Academy Testing Day, the very first time these two fated rivals crossed paths. A stunned examiner stared into the crystal ball jaws, literally dropping in disbelief. Both little monsters possessed the crazy potential to become legendary archmages. That is a ridiculous once-in-a-millennium jackpot. The absolute pinnacle of the magic world. The legendary immortality rank. They are literal gods, eternal beings flexing powers that make even the mighty emperor sweat. These terrifying freaks are the archmages. Historically, the universe strictly allows only 3 archmages per era. No VIP passes, no elite shortcuts, and absolutely no bribing. It is an absolute cosmic law. The server cap is strictly 3, including Deculein, who already snagged the ultimate eternal rank. That leaves exactly 2 empty slots, and Headmaster Adrian is aggressively gunning for one of them, meaning Sylvia and Ephraim are locked in a magical cold war for that shiny final archmage promotion. That is exactly why Papa Glytheon went full mafia, threatening Ephraim's dad to block her enrollment. They mercilessly raided Kagan Luna's estate, sparking massive noble drama. All for his precious little Sylvia. Even with a ruined family, Ephraim was somehow winning the archmage race. And Sylvia, she was entirely obsessed with claiming that ultimate crown. Sylvia pondered deeply. Was she actually terrified of losing to a broke rival? Nah, absolutely not. That peasant was just a tiny bug. Meanwhile, Glytheon warned his daughter to stay hyper-vigilant around the notorious Professor Deculein. That wicked man was a walking disaster waiting to happen. Stagnant or not, he used to be a terrifying prodigy. Sylvia realized that absolute monster probably already spotted her sneaky little trap. Flashback to the explosive catfight. Sylvia had effortlessly vacuumed up all the raging mana from Ephraim's desperate strike. Then she planted a nasty little spell designed to detonate right in her opponent's face. If that bomb had actually gone off, instant school expulsion. Deculein totally saw through her cheap tricks. Instead of snitching, he cryptically blamed her for not preventing the mess, flexing his terrifying omniscient aura. Checkmate. Sylvia had to swallow her pride. She expected a delusional, arrogant noble, but this guy was built entirely different from her wildest imagination. Fast forward a few days, back at the villain's lair, Deculein was suiting up for a VIP event. Chilling in his luxury ride, he praised his gamer logic. Helping Ephraim was undeniably the optimal system play. He raked in precious story points and successfully deleted a massive, annoying death flag from his future. Hilariously, he just realized that the clueless newbie from the tutorial phase was actually Ephraim all along. He also figured Sylvia was now plotting his brutal murder after that classroom stunt. But hey, acting like a strict tyrant was the only way to dodge a bad ending. Our introverted villain absolutely hated awkward social grinding, but the shiny chance to farm shop coins was too irresistible. The forced main quest: survive the snobby social gala known as New Year's Flower. The system shop demanded a 5-coin entry fee, so he had to greedily milk every single side quest available. His slick car pulled up to a ridiculously flashy palace, complete with a dramatic VIP red carpet entrance. The gala was absolutely infested with snobby nobles. Deculein spotted several familiar targets, including Ehelm, a poor guy he used to mentally torture for fun. Suddenly enduring this stuffy high society party felt like a brilliant high IQ move. An old aristocratic boomer immediately rushed over. "Oh my god, Professor Deculein, my son takes your class." Cue the swarm of shameless, non-playable characters kissing his boots. Deculein mentally rolled his eyes at the cringe and completely ignored their shallow flattery. Tuning into the banquet gossip, the name Ganesha sparked his interest. She was an absolute VIP right now. Getting on this legendary adventurer's good side would basically secure his survival in this crazy world. Scanning the glamorous crowd for her, prickles of warning ran down his spine. Someone was staring. Bingo. It was Ganesha, sticking out like a sore thumb in adventurer gear with flaming red braids. Before he could intercept her, a buzzing fly approached. It was Ehelm, a rank 4 Imperial Court mage. Dripping with fake politeness, Ehelm gloated about being remembered by the so-called Great Professor Deculein. Playing the innocent card, the rat brought up some rather spicy rumors, attacking the professor's good name. Ehelm sneered that Deculein's magical research had completely stalled for 3 years, calling his academic career a sham. The disrespect was loud. Turns out this annoying guy used to be Deculein's buddy back at the academy. But ever since our main character snagged the senior professor title, Ehelm turned into a jealous hater. The original villainous Deculein would have thrown a massive tantrum, but our current guy practically could not care less. Besides, the loser was spitting facts. Distracted, Deculein glanced back, only to realize his golden ticket, Ganesha, vanished. Internal screaming intensified. This petty mage just cost him his crucial networking opportunity. Invading his personal space, he coldly told the bitter little man to mind his own pathetic business. While Ehelm sputtered in sheer outrage, Deculein mentally scrambled. If he did not find Ganesha quickly, his survival plan was toast. Later on, while the entire party sought the famous professor, he was pulling a masterful disappearing act. Dodging annoying social climbers was a full-time job. Honestly, this is why he absolutely hated fancy noble banquets. Suddenly, a familiar silhouette blocked his escape path. It was his missing target, Ganesha. Smirking playfully, she found it hilarious, running into him almost like he was actually tracking her. He sweat dropped. He was just escaping his crazy fan club and stumbled right into her. Did they have past beef? Ganesha chuckled loudly, assuming he cornered her for a super serious top-secret chat. Bowing slightly, she refunded his deposit and paid the penalty fee, casually begging for some much-needed mercy. Memories clicked. The original villain hired her to kidnap a magically gifted kid, but she totally botched it. Actually, she just got too emotionally attached to the brat and refused to finish the shady job. Oh crap, the original owner of this body was a total scum trying to steal a poor innocent child's magic talent. Glaring sharply, Ganesha dared to ask how long he would act so corrupt. The previous Deculein was a fragile narcissist ruining innocent lives just to keep his own fake reputation sparkling clean. Deculein coolly declared he was turning over a new leaf. Ganesha flinched, fully expecting this crazy villain to try and execute her. After all, she knew his darkest secrets and practically ran away with his money. Our main character inwardly panicked. Was she seriously expecting a deadly showdown right here? Fighting her absolute madness, this monster of a woman could crush his skull like a grape with 2 fingers. She was a legendary supreme master, basically a walking, talking, indestructible tank disguised as a cute adventurer. Thankfully, he only possessed this villain's body recently. If the original guy sent assassins after her, he would already be sleeping in a coffin. This dramatic chat totally derailed his script, but hey, at least he secured a semi-friendly connection with her. Needing a tactical retreat, he smoothly excused himself back to the party, telling her to relax her guard. Dropping her jaw, Ganesha asked if she was really surviving tonight. He scoffed, claiming he wasn't completely evil. Leaving her utterly bamboozled, he pondered using his fancy noble status to dazzle her entire adventurer guild later on. But playing politics from the backlines was still a massive headache that screamed danger. Suddenly, a system notification popped up. He miraculously dodged a lethal death flag and earned a sweet store coin. Cold sweat dripped down his back. Wait, was he literally one wrong sentence away from being murdered just now? Survival was practically a myth. Meanwhile, across the ballroom, a bored rookie adventurer nudged her glamorous sister. Pouting miserably, Julie complained that attending this snobby event was pure torture anyway. Her sister scolded her to stop sulking and finally asked about the giant elephant in the room. The nasty gossip surrounding Professor Deculein was everywhere, and she was stressing out over his terrible reputation. Flashing back to their incredibly awkward chat, Julie grimaced. Things were spiraling into a total disaster. That juicy gossip left her completely disgusted. Right on cue, the big bad Deculein strutted closer, but catching one glimpse of Julie Man pulled an instant U-turn. The crowd was utterly baffled. Wasn't he an absolute attention hog at these shiny parties? Gasps echoed everywhere. Dude literally abandoned his own fiancée. The gossip mill exploded. Their relationship was pure toxic waste, and those spicy rumors were 100% confirmed. Our majestic villain speed ran out of that ballroom like his pants were ablaze. High society went totally feral over their spicy couple drama. Meanwhile, Kim Woojin was blissfully ignorant of the tea. Man was just happily farming shiny system coins. 2 months post-mansion drama. Between cramming spell formulas and basic telekinesis, our guy finally started hitting the gym. Why the fitness arc? Because his trash stamina almost caused a total game over during a science experiment. Flashback to days ago, Deculein dramatically face-planted in his dark office, violently coughing up blood like a tragic heroine. Any normal magic nerd would be completely dead. He only survived thanks to his ridiculously overpowered iron body trait. That terrifying run-in with Ganesha sparked a massive power-up obsession. Recklessly, he tried infusing his manipulation metal with literal raging fire. A genius double buff combo. Stacking spells like that would shoot his attack stats straight through the roof. Spoiler alert, it heavily backfired. The physical recoil was absolutely insane, crushing his body with life-threatening pressure. His only solution, getting incredibly swole. Maybe intense muscle training would stop his fragile body from spontaneously exploding. Cue the hardcore workout montage. Boom. Instant god-tier abs. But after securing those gains, the brutal corporate grind called. Back at his villainous desk, he grilled Alan about a highly suspicious notification that just dropped. Alan nervously spilled the truth. A super official warning from the Magic Tower's ruthlessly strict teaching committee. The ultimate academic boss fight loomed. A brutal performance review evaluating his research progress in exactly 6 months. He desperately needed a complete mind-blowing academic portfolio by deadline day. Reality hit hard. The original Deculein was totally slacking on research before possession. This stalled progress was a monumental career-ending disaster for him. In the original game lore, his esteemed professor title was absolute. His entire survival quest depended on keeping that shiny badge. Academic tenure literally equaled life. Getting fired meant an instant, unavoidable, one-way ticket straight to the graveyard. Praying for leftover loot, he checked his personal laboratory. But stepping inside, a total, unadulterated magical garbage dump, the place looked like a haunted, abandoned ruin. No way the neat freak original owner actually worked in this gross filth. Suddenly, his radar pinged. A massive, suspiciously artificial mud pile sat completely out of place. A hidden treasure vault. Whatever secret lay buried that gross mud trap was definitely designed to exploit his severe, crippling germophobia. Modern problems require telekinetic solutions. He effortlessly swept the muck away without dirtying his glorious hands. Jackpot. A hidden grimoire emerged from the sludge. But heavily encrypted gibberish covered every page, fiercely guarding top-secret magical research. Sadly for the author, his overpowered comprehension skill laughed at those codes. Instantly blinding golden mana erupted like a dazzling supernova. Absolute genius-level magical theory. But plot twist sadly incomplete. Blank spots, ripped pages, and hilariously wrong math. Yet the core concept was insanely spicy, making his overpowered understanding trait go totally wild. A wild photo of Ephraim fell out. Her poor dad definitely buried this masterpiece, desperately hiding it from the original evil Deculein. The original villain completely trashed the Luna household. Thanks to him, poor Ephraim was practically living on extreme hard mode. This mess was entirely his fault. So he savagely crumpled the notes. Not his circus, and definitely not his magically induced monkeys. Wait. If he speed ran finishing this brilliant thesis, he would totally slap her name right on it as co-author. Next morning at the absolute cheapest campus cafeteria, the underdog commoner squad was hyping up a massive class rebellion. One girl passionately declared their survival odds. With 30 plebeians enrolled, failing to team up meant an instant academic game over. She desperately looked to Ephraim for backup. Our girl nodded along, completely ignoring her own bankrupt fallen noble status. Honestly, her noble title carried zero weight anyway. Another student shamelessly crowned Ephraim as their ultimate unquestionable plebeian mascot. After all, she spectacularly crushed the elite prodigy Sylvia. Record scratch. One anxious nerd panicked about forming an illegal underground club. Wouldn't the strict professors absolutely nuke an unauthorized gathering? The hype instantly died. She admitted every single professor was basically a massive simp for the wealthy noble faction. Someone scoffed, instantly crossing the villainous Professor Deculein off their imaginary ally list. Meanwhile, clueless Ephraim purely fantasized about eating sweet cake. The Commoner Club boss totally cornered Ephraim, begging her to be the sacrificial lamb and ask the infamous Professor Deculein for their official permit. Ephraim shook in absolute terror. Another student totally disagreed, joking that the strict professor was completely fair since he fiercely despised everyone equally. The club leader cheekily nudged her, teasing that since the icy professor went easy on her during the disciplinary hearing, he might actually like her. Ephraim frantically shook her head. This was an absolutely terrible idea, and her peaceful academy life was quickly spiraling into pure chaotic madness. She honestly wanted to avoid that terrifying man's face at all costs. Sprinting right out of the crowded cafeteria, she yelled that poking the sleeping dragon for a favor would absolutely guarantee their total doom. But as the stubborn club leader chased after her, she suddenly froze in absolute horror. Ephraim turned around to check what was wrong, only to find the dreaded Deculein himself politely ordering them to step out of his path. Julia instantly bolted like a total traitor, leaving Ephraim completely defenseless. Surprisingly, the intimidating professor simply glided right past them in utter silence. Mustering her courage, Ephraim chased him, bowed intensely and nervously blurted out their grand club plans. She desperately begged for his single signature. She swore they would vanish from his sight forever, confessing that no other teacher would ever sponsor mere commoners. Even though she totally despised breathing the same air as him, her annoying friend's logic was actually completely bulletproof. The snobby elitist faculty would absolutely crush their little club dreams into total dust. Better to risk this crazy gamble than fail completely. To her utter shock, Deculein snatched the form casually, ordering her to forward the full documentation to his office later. Her jaw literally hit the floor when he handed it back. The icy monster had actually signed it. Was scoring the demon professor's approval seriously this ridiculously easy all along? Suddenly, Julia tackled her in a massive bear hug, screaming that she was an absolute legend, and they actually succeeded. Why was this villain acting so bizarrely nice to her lately? Fast forward to his very next lecture, which plunged deep into the absolute core of pure elements. Every rookie knew elements were the ultimate foundation of spells. Yet surprisingly, countless veteran mages remained totally clueless about the gap between spell categories and pure elemental forces. Ephraim zoned out, wondering if this icy man was finally choking on guilt over her father's tragic death, or just throwing out cheap pity to clear his rotten conscience. He looked ridiculously arrogant. If he genuinely regretted his dark sins, why not just man up and publicly expose all his filthy secrets to the entire world? Julia furiously whispered, asking if she was okay since she had been glaring terrifying daggers for ages. She jokingly reminded her that spacing out during this snobby lecture was totally fine. Ephraim tilted her head suddenly, realizing the chilling truth she was now public enemy number one to the elite snobs. The genius Sylvia and her rich cronies were practically shooting laser beams of disgust at her. Ephraim just brushed it off, whispering that she was basically immune to their pathetic glare games anyway. Just ignore the pathetic snobs and focus entirely on the magical lecture. Despite wanting to completely ignore the villainous teacher, Ephraim found her brain totally captivated by his mind-blowing magical theories. Deculein eloquently revealed that a rookie fire spell could actually erupt into a dazzling rainbow simply by tweaking 2 tiny strokes within its glowing magic circle. With a dramatic pause, he announced their epic challenge for the day, mastering the legendary floating flame. Ephraim gasped, realizing this mind-blowing brilliance was absolutely real. The old Deculein used lectures just to flex his ego and bully everyone. But this secret imposter, Kim Woojin, was delivering an absolute masterclass in flawless mana manipulation. He brilliantly shattered the mental limits of the arrogant elites. The entire hall sat paralyzed in pure awe. Even the naturally gifted, totally bored prodigy Sylvia stared with wide, shocked eyes. Woojin smoothly explained how their basic magic circle typically only summoned basic water elements. But plot twist, smashing water elements into a fire formula magically forces the flames to flow exactly like a liquid river. The entire classroom literally lost their minds over this insane sorcery. Sylvia felt her brain short-circuiting. This single, unbelievable lesson contained a dangerously massive treasury of condensed magical theory. He declared that true magical geniuses wield power through raw instinct. To them, rigid theory is just a suffocating prison cage. Relying purely on books turns spells into boring, lifeless copies. Obsessing over strict rules tragically steals away precious time meant for mastering true explosive magic. Clinging strictly to magical theory is a terrible method that unnecessarily ruins a wizard's true growth. That is the ultimate magical paradox. Climbing to the elite tier demands godly instinct exactly like the terrifying masterclass Deculein was flawlessly showing off right now. Elite prodigies could barely explain their own mysterious magical instincts. Sylvia was totally shook. For a pure battle mage like Deculein to suddenly drop theoretical knowledge of this godly caliber was absolutely mind-boggling. Strolling down the hallway later, Ephraim let out a massive sigh. That lecture totally shattered all the nasty rumors. Honestly, she had never been so insanely absorbed in a lesson before. Heading back to the magical dormitories, Ephraim stared at the commoner dorm door now plastered with nasty graffiti, calling them arrogant trash unfit for the academy. Seriously, how long would these noble brats keep whining? The bullying definitely skyrocketed after she publicly challenged Sylvia. But wait, peeking under her door was a mysterious, shiny sponsorship certificate. Ephraim smirked. She wasn't falling for this painfully obvious trap. Seriously, who would randomly throw money at her? Planning to report the scammer for sweet bounty cash, she marched to the magic office. Plot twist. The sponsorship was entirely real. Her jaw absolutely dropped when the staff verified the official golden seal. Overjoyed, she violently pinched her own cheek to wake up. Had anyone caught her looking like a complete fool? Sprinting back to her dorm, she frantically packed her survival gear. If greedy assassins came for her fortune, she was ready to bolt. Recalling the secretary's weird expression, her paranoia spiked. Were they actually plotting to rob her? She had to stay vigilant. Thumping her forehead onto the wooden desk, she winced. Well, the throbbing pain proved this wasn't an illusion. Happy tears streamed down. Someone brilliant had finally recognized her absolute genius. Now she could grind just a bit harder for her dreams. Meanwhile, back at the luxurious Yukline estate, poor Yariel was raging. The loyal butler cautiously reported that the notorious Mr. Deculein was heading straight for the extravagant Howard auction house. Yariel exploded. That arrogant idiot flushed 1 million down the drain last year. What on earth was he plotting now? Was he actively trying to bankrupt their entire noble family? She swore to crush him if he caused another catastrophic disaster. At the bustling auction, Deculein smirked internally. Since his magical talent was pure garbage, he desperately needed premium metals to amplify his mana. His current pathetic stash of wood steel was just a fragile temporary band-aid. His true legendary prize awaited right here. But suddenly, a hilariously awkward plot twist appeared, his righteous ex-fiancée Julie. She rose elegantly, piercing him with an icy glare before stiffly asking how he was. Deculein's sweat dropped. This was totally off-script. She coldly accused him of dragging 2 rookie mages to the disciplinary committee. Deculein deadpanned that her gossip radar was painfully outdated. Playing the hero card, she snapped that they were innocent freshmen who had barely stepped foot on campus. Was his grand, villainous master plan to crush their tiny dreams and plunge them into absolute despair? Glaring daggers, she demanded he stop repeating his trashy past mistakes. Consider this her absolute final dramatic hero warning. A final warning, Deculein chuckled inwardly. The righteous knight was clearly itching to sever their toxic engagement forever. Honestly, that was fantastic news, despite the minor hit to his villainous reputation. Sure, she was gorgeous, but marriage? Absolutely not. Her family drama was a walking death trap. Plus, a literal assassination event triggers during their wedding ceremony. Hard pass. Disgusted by his absolute arrogance, Julie whipped her head away, refusing to even look. Deculein stroked his chin. According to the game's lore, the annoyingly pure knight Julie completely despised flashy auction houses. He smirked, asking if she came purely to scold him. Blushing with furious embarrassment, she called him a delusional, arrogant narcissist. Yeah, right. Her tsundere act fooled no one. She definitely wanted some auction loot. Deculein nonchalantly brushed her off, stating she didn't need to repeat her dramatic speech. Message received loud and clear. He had never witnessed this flustered side of her. But wait. A sudden spine-chilling sensation crept up his neck. Danger was definitely lurking. Deep inside that villainous brain, Kim Woojin panicked. Was he getting infected by the original Deculein's lingering pathetic crush on her? He frantically mental-slapped himself. He absolutely could not let the original villain's romantic feelings hijack his pure survival instincts. The booming announcer saved him, declaring the auction's start. Deculein composed himself. It wasn't like his heart was doing romantic backflips anyway. He was just being ridiculously paranoid. As the flashy event kicked off, the very first item was a supposedly legendary porcelain vase. His magical eyes immediately detected pure, cold profit radiating from it. The shouting crowd pushed the bids from 1.3 to 1.5 million. Yawn. Deculein lazily dropped a massive 2.5 million bid. His overpowered golden vision continued to sparkle brilliantly. This meant no matter how high he flexed his wallet, it was still a guaranteed scam-free steal. Frankly, his bank account was an absolute joke. He had 205 million ready. Going full whale mode, he ruthlessly sniped every single good item. The crowd gaped in terror as VIP bidder 777 monopolized the auction. Watching his arrogant spending spree, Julie felt deep pity for his empty soul. They were truly from completely different worlds. Disgusted by his twisted materialistic values, she decided to completely ignore his very existence. But then the spectacular grand finale finally rolled out. A literal, mythical drop. An impossibly rare heavenly mineral that had forged the most devastatingly powerful swords in human history. Wow, magic ice on fire. The flaming snowstone left both Deculein and Julie totally starstruck. This ultra-rare rock was basically the holy grail of metals. Blacksmiths usually forged it into overpowered frost swords. Yeah, the name makes zero sense. It literally held both blazing heat and freezing cold inside. Unless you wanted to go punch a dragon for its bones, this spicy ice rock was the absolute ultimate loot. Julie desperately wanted that shiny upgrade. The auctioneer hyped it up. 10 million, 13, 20, 25 million gold. 30 million, Julie declared, mentally doing a victory dance. No one would possibly top that bid, right? Wrong. Deculein casually dropped 31 million. Julie glared at Paddle. 777. Why was this absolute troll ruining her day? She mentally cursed his existence as the bidding war escalated into madness. The peanut gallery gossiped. Oh, he is totally buying that sword material for his fiancée. Wow, what an absolute romantic. Plot twist. Deculein suddenly realized his fierce competitor was his fiancée, Julie. He knew stealing her dream loot would spawn infinite aggro. But did he back down? Absolutely not. The rock was his. Sure, dropping this legendary item might take decades, but the relationship damage was going to be critical. Keep the fiancé or take the epic loot. It was the ultimate gamer dilemma. Obviously, he chose the flaming snowstone. 42 million. Deculein flexed his massive wallet. The room fell dead silent. He won. The crowd lost their minds over the flex. They whispered that Julie was just being greedy, wanting the massive gift for herself. Hearing those toxic rumors, Julie's blood pressure skyrocketed. He is doing his ridiculous show-off routine again, she fumed. She literally never asked for his shiny garbage. Last time, he bought the whole catalog just to flex his wealth. It was purely to stroke his gigantic, arrogant ego. Sick of his toxic rich guy nonsense, Julie fiercely turned on her heel and stormed out. The engagement vibe was completely ruined, but you think Deculein would just let that slide? Not a chance. Suddenly, nasty rumors about Julie hit the streets. A malicious campaign entirely aiming to destroy her reputation. The culprit was painfully obvious. Did he seriously think this comic book villain plot would win her back? It only pushed her away. She swore she would never ever fall for an arrogant, toxic mess like him. Outside the venue, Deculein totally cornered her. Did you actually want that spicy rock that badly? He asked. Julie mentally braced herself. He was totally manipulating her like a toy. But he just apologized. Julie's brain practically blue-screened since he had never said sorry before. He casually walked off, leaving her completely dumbfounded. Was he sorry for ninja looting the stone? The old Deculein would never do this. Julie, a sharp voice echoed at the exit. It was Big Sister Josephine, the intimidating boss lady of the Freyden house. Back at his ridiculously huge mansion, Deculein sighed. She obviously wanted that shiny rock to forge an overpowered weapon. Since he practically stole her quest reward, she was obviously furious. Still, failing to avoid a giant death flag was terrifying. He knew she still had plenty of chances to assassinate him. Stepping inside, his servants looked totally terrified. Miss Uriel had already entered the chat. He marched down the hall and faced the boss. That money was for the mine, Uriel screeched. Why are you hoarding our cash? Deculein internally panicked. Oops, maybe he should have been sneakier with his ridiculously loaded personal bank account. He smoothly swore he only bought profitable loot. Uriel completely lost it. Am I just a trash can to you? She roared. Do you think my life's purpose is sweeping up your epic disasters? She cried that their estate finances were doomed. We are grinding daily to dodge bankruptcy, while you just speed-run through our cash like an absolute madman. What kind of absolute moron gambles the mansion's funds away? Suddenly, an ominous villain aura sparked inside Deculain's vision. Oh, crap. The rich magnate vibe was fusing straight into his villain fate. If he didn't calm this raging storm, he was a dead man, but if he played his cards right, infinite wealth. But he already had the cheat code smoothly, telling the fuming Uriel to chill. Chill, Uriel snapped. Every time you screw up, I am the one suffering and mopping up your messes. How am I supposed to live like this? I literally dropped out of college and have zero social life because of your nonsense. Deculein just smirked, saying she never needed to do that. Uriel narrowed her eyes, demanding answers. Since their parents passed, he had been a walking disaster, literally burning through 150 million in a single ridiculous day. Deculein dropped a massive bombshell. He was handing her the family head title. Her jaw practically hit the floor as he calmly repeated his crazy offer. Her cheeks flushed bright red. Was he totally serious? He just scoffed, shutting down her disbelief. He casually offered a deadly mana oath to prove it. Uriel gulped, asking if it was the literal death penalty kind. Deculein just nodded like it was nothing. She stared at him like he was crazy. Did he hit his head recently? Deculein shrugged. Believe it or do not, it was happening. Uriel glared, reminding him that breaking this deadly promise meant a literal game over. He asked if she was seriously storming off. She snapped back that someone burned their fortune and she had to clean up his gigantic mess. The second she slammed the door, Deculein scored 2 system coins. He let out a massive sigh. The angry sister storm had finally passed. Miraculously, he defused the ticking time bomb without exploding himself. Being a top-tier professor meant losing the family title was no big sweat. One smart move at a time, and he just might dodge his destined villain death flag. Cue the shattered piece. An intruder randomly popped through his window. It was Ganesha. She claimed she was just passing by, but that juicy sibling drama was way too shocking to ignore. She had to spill the tea. Deculein blinked. What was so shocking, Ganesha deadpanned that she practically ran his family anyway, but making it official was wild. Then, she dropped the ultimate soap opera twist. Uriel did not have a single drop of Yukline blood. Deculein mentally blue-screened. What was she talking about? That hidden plotline was definitely not in his game wiki. The original game code clearly stated Uriel was his half-sister. He knew she was not fully related. But 0% blood relation, that was a massive curveball he never saw coming at all. Ganesha smirked, reminding him that his past self literally paid her to run that secret DNA test in the first place. Must be an unreleased side quest, he thought. Whatever blood or no blood, she was still his annoying but loyal little sister anyway. Ganesha stared at him, absolutely flabbergasted. The old trashy Deculein would never say something so incredibly wholesome. She zipped her lips, promising to bury the secret forever. But she had one last, super ominous warning for him. The legendary 6 snakeheads were making moves. They were the most notorious underworld bosses on the continent, with massive multi-million coin bounties hovering over every single one. Those terrifying thugs wanted his newly auctioned loot. She told him to sleep with one eye open and watch his back carefully. Seriously, she told him to aggressively buff the magical wards around his mansion. Once she vanished, Deculein aggressively scrubbed the window with telekinesis. Classic neat freak germaphobe behavior. Internal panic activated. He was in deep trouble, now completely clueless about this incoming disaster. Honestly, though, ignorance is bliss. Knowing the details would not change his epic survival plan anyway. Real blood or adopted stranger, his attitude would not shift an inch. Uriel was his little sister, and that was a concrete fact. Cut to the deep forest, Ganesha gossiped with her party, completely mind-blown by the professor's total reboot. Hearing polite words from that arrogant jerk felt like a glitch in the Matrix. How did the worst villain alive suddenly turn into such a totally decent guy? A cheeky party member teased that she just had a massive crush on handsome dudes. Ganesha threatened to literally rip his ugly face off. The guy just cried that his sweet grandmother always called him a handsome boy. A hilarious, dusty cartoon brawl erupted instantly. Meanwhile, a girl in the group, actually Julie's secret niece, grumbled about how ridiculously confusing the language was. Uncle, older cousin, or older brother, total nightmare. Everyone gets called older brother. It makes things impossibly confusing. Ganesha stopped the fight. Deculein was officially off their threat list. He clearly was not hunting for new magic slaves anymore. The evil professor era was over. She ordered them to pack up and head back, threatening them to keep their mouths completely shut about the juicy secrets. With a bright flash of teleportation magic, the party vanished. Next morning at the shiny magic tower, Deculein cracked open the system shop window. But tragedy struck. He was entirely too broke to buy anything. The starter pack for epic monoquality cost a whopping 10 coins. His balance, absolute zero. The legendary system shop was a total game changer. You could spend coins to massively buff the main character and vital characters. But there was a brutal catch. You could only trigger these reality-bending upgrades 6 measly times before the final game over screen. 1 upgrade per shop tier, and the insane price tag doubled every single time. Total robbery. His daily grind was brutal. Sweaty workouts, endless memorization, flying sword shadowboxing, and extreme endurance training. Luckily, no massive villains were crashing his party just yet. But to survive, he desperately needed that premium mana quality buff from the shop. A sudden knock shattered the silence. Poor Alan peeked in trembling as he delivered the paperwork in a newspaper. The front page headline screamed, "Assassin Mage, Lockhart, is officially a wanted man." Locals swore they hadn't spotted his shadow anywhere nearby. Deculein pondered about the infamous killer mage Lockhart. He knew this lunatic was the absolute worst early game nightmare for every player, especially the squishy academy mages. Was this boss monster spawning already? An average mage would be completely doomed, but Deculein had absolutely zero things to worry about. Honestly, crossing his path might just be a total jackpot for farming shiny system shop coins. Deculein coldly told the shaking boy to ignore the assassin. Then he dismissed him, announcing his grand, highly important trip to the school's library. Pausing at the door, Alan nervously asked about hiring a teaching assistant. Deculein smirked and confidently replied, "Yes, naturally." Alan's jaw literally dropped. He practically shrieked, stammering if Deculein was actually promoting his quote-unquote talentless self to be his official assistant, despite all the previous harsh insults. Deculein smoothly lied that he had finally changed his mind. Truthfully, the annoying academy system just forced him to appoint an assistant immediately. He sharply cut off Alan's endless babbling questions. Tossing him a shiny Yukline family bracelet, Deculein demanded hard work. The poor kid instantly burst into happy tears, bowing like a bobblehead, utterly overwhelmed by this tiny drop of recognition. Internally, Deculein chuckled. The kid was an absolute paperwork machine and highly useful. There was zero chance he was letting him escape. Though considering his past villainous, downright cruel behavior towards the poor guy, Deculein really couldn't blame him if he sprinted for the nearest hills. Seriously, since this overworked slave did everything completely alone, why hadn't he run away yet? Feeling unusually generous, Deculein tossed him thick cash for a nice dinner and granted him a totally rare day off. The boy gasped at the absurd fortune. Deculein simply spun on his heel and left him standing absolutely speechless. Later stepping into the exclusive staff library, Deculein's thoughts drifted to Luna's mysterious diary, that dirty, mud-covered artifact he discovered hidden inside his messy lab. That frustrating journal was packed with magical plot holes. He desperately needed some high-tier grimoires to aggressively patch up those glaring research errors and massive flaws. Suddenly, perfectly matching the plot's timeline, he spotted an unexpected guest. He raised an eyebrow, demanding to know why a mere student was sneaking around the professor's private sanctuary. It was the genius freshman Sylvia Iliad, busted completely red-handed. Flashback to 10 minutes ago, Sylvia had been politely begging the front desk for access to some top-secret academic research materials in the staff zone. The pushover Professor Relin had totally caved to the secretary, granting full exclusive access simply because of her incredibly shiny, untouchable Iliad noble family status and immense prestige. The secretary let her pass. Sylvia's secret hobby was basically hardcore literature and ancient languages, so she basically lived inside any fancy reading room she could secretly infiltrate. She disguised it as magical research, but her real treasure was a super rare, intensely cheesy romance novel written in ancient Ethanel, unlike anything she had ever seen. Since the mythical fairies vanished, these Ethanel love stories had become ridiculously expensive and practically impossible to find anywhere in the modern world. That was her hilarious secret motive, sneaking into the executive zone just to binge-read rare fairy tale romance novels strictly forbidden from regular academy students. She never expected the villainous Deculein to catch her. He coldly stared her down, asking why she trespassed and if she wanted a one-way ticket straight to the disciplinary committee. Absolutely terrified, she flinched and asked why he was there. Deculein smoothly stated he was fetching authorized documents approved by Relin. He then scoffed, pointing out that both Professor Relin and the lazy librarian had completely trashed the strict school rules. Clearly, both rule breakers deserved a harsh disciplinary punishment. He noticed her hidden treasure. Deculein snatched it away, mercilessly mocking her for risking academic suicide just to read some sappy Ethanel fairy romance against the strict rules. Shocked that he actually understood the ancient text, Sylvia frantically yelled, "That was not the main point." She frantically mumbled excuses about studying classic languages. Shoving the silly book back, Deculein gave a stern warning he would let it slide, but sneak in here again and he would personally suspend her. He casually departed, leaving her completely behind. She thought he had just humiliated her, totally unaware that his real goal was deciphering fairy secrets through that exact cheesy romance. She stood there absolutely mind-blown, wondering how he could fluently read such a complex, totally inconsistent ancient fairy language. Later, during a chaotic field class, the freshman group gathered in a forest clearing for an intense survival training session. Professor Relin beamed, announcing this was their first real practical exam and praising their absolute lack of fear regarding the infamous deadly Mountain of Darkness. Relin proudly commented that this dangerous training naturally had to pause by nightfall, but he was incredibly impressed. You see, the Mountain of Darkness sat miles away, holding immense strategic importance and boasting insane maximum security barriers straight from the Magic Tower. This terrifying forest was the ultimate leveling zone for Academy mages, offering brutal, real-world combat experience and a massive goldmine of rare magical materials. Naturally, the spawn rate of highly toxic deadly beasts was absolutely off the charts. To survive, the Magic Tower deployed massive protective barriers and ensured non-stop security patrols by on-duty professors. Relin was sweating bullets. The weekly duty roster was completely empty, and they desperately needed a fresh volunteer. He pushed a poor scapegoat forward, but Deculein just smirked. "I will do it." Relin's eyes sparkled with pure fanboy tears. As expected from our legendary head professor Noble, please, Deculein's inner gamer was screaming. He just wanted those sweet System Shop coins. Plus, some sketchy forest aura kept whispering his name. A classic trigger for a sudden side quest. What fresh horror waited on that mountain, knowing his terrible luck, absolutely nothing good. 9 hours later, Ephraim casually flexed her wallet at a cafe, treating the squad to premium desserts. "Drinks are on me," she cheered. Julia grinned, sliding over their flawlessly prepped club paperwork. This was their first massive win. Now they just prayed their club wouldn't be a ghost town. The squad confidently promised that new members would naturally join. Julia gossiped about some dark mountain training, but Ephraim, she was totally lost in cake heaven. Boom. A terrifying shockwave shattered the peace. Panic erupted as screams for help sent everyone rushing outside. Julia sensed massive danger, but our clueless hero charged blindly. Ephraim skidded to a halt. "Wait, where am I?" The cozy street had completely vanished. "Help," a voice wailed. Ephraim sprinted over, but plot twist. That wasn't a civilian, it was a blood-soaked nightmare. Stranger danger. Ephraim instantly flared up her battle magic for self-defense. Enter Professor Deculein. He mercilessly blasted the victim. "Why did you just nuke an innocent woman?" she screamed. He sighed coldly. "Open your eyes, idiot. That is no human." The victim morphed into a massive, ugly monster. Deculein scoffed at the classic demonic illusion magic. Using pure telekinesis, he yanked Ephraim by the collar like a totally helpless kitten. "Hunting time," he smirked. The demon roared, absolutely furious at losing its free lunch. The beast lunged, but Deculein casually swatted it away with telekinetic steel. It bounced off his metal shield like a toy bingo. Its glowing core was right on its forehead. But normal steel tickled its ridiculously thick skin. The demon's boiling blood sent it into a berserker rage. But joke's on the demon. The mighty Yukline bloodline was literally built to crush these things. When touching demonic energy, a Yukline's mana acted like a super filter, purifying everything into ultra-high quality power. The only side effect: it made them extremely terrifyingly aggressive. Basically, his ancient DNA screamed to destroy all demons instantly. The legendary Yuklines were ancient demon hunters. Deculein felt that ancient fury, awakening zero mercy, allowed just pure destruction. Bam! He sniped the beast straight in the head with a flying steel shard. Cha-ching. 1 shot point for the demon kill, and a bonus point for flexing his Yukline family pride. A new attribute unlocked, still utterly disgusting. Deculein scoffed at the dead carcass. But this was terrible news. The game's main plot had officially started without the actual player. Next morning, Ephraim blinked her eyes open, then immediately let out an earth-shattering scream. "You are awake?" the maid calmly asked. Ephraim flailed. "What happened? I was literally in a terrifying forest." The maid sighed softly. "It is perfectly fine if your brain rebooted. Last night, a literal demon ambushed the mountain. She totally passed out and got dragged to the clinic. Now the mountain was totally locked down. The Magic Tower was actively investigating the crime scene. Oh, and spoiler alert, the cold Professor Deculein actually saved her life." Ephraim grimaced at his name. "Wait, what day is it?" The nurse shrugged. "You slept 36 hours. It is Wednesday." "I am incredibly late," she shrieked. Kicking the door open, she sprinted to class. Julia gasped. "Are you alive?" Julia had visited the clinic earlier, but Ephraim was basically in a coma. Never better, 0 scratches and fully charged. Ephraim beamed. "So what are we learning today?" Julia just nervously shrugged. Everything was already mysteriously set up for them. Materials were neatly prepared. Then boss music played. Deculein entered, trailed by his brand new assistant Alan. Ephraim stared totally clueless. But then Deculein dropped an absolute bombshell. "Meet Alan, the new teaching assistant." Whispers exploded across the room. Wait, didn't this arrogant villain always fly solo? In the original plot, assistants literally never existed, snagging that head assistant role. A massive golden ticket. Especially under a terrifying big-shot noble like Deculein. Ephraim caught the gossip and nodded. It made perfect sense. Her own dad was a brilliant researcher, yet he never scored an academy assistant gig even by 30. Why did Deculein choose an absolute nobody? Ignoring the stares, the icy professor announced today's brutal lesson. It was time for pure hands-on practical experience. The mission: crack a magical puzzle in under 3 hours. Cue Alan handing out countdown timers like ticking bombs. Ephraim absent-mindedly rubbed her bracelet. That precious heirloom always brought bittersweet memories of her late dad. What exactly was their dark history? Why did this aristocrat crush her father's dreams without a thought? Was this assistant gig some twisted act of charity? She slapped her cheeks. Focus, just clear the quest. Boom, 25 minutes and 15 seconds in, someone cleared it. The genius Sylvia had effortlessly sprouted every single magical branch. Deculein inspected the glowing mana. Flawless, he declared, granting the golden girl an ultra-smug early dismissal. Sylvia gracefully stood, shot Ephraim a pitying glance, and scoffed aloud. Cue Ephraim's absolute blazing rage. Panic mode activated. She had to hurry, but tick-tock. Julia bailed, then ran. Soon the entire classroom became a ghost town. Ephraim was officially the dead last loser remaining. Brainstorming time. Getting totally flexed on by Sylvia was humiliating enough, but wearing the ultimate dunce cap for the entire class. Absolutely unacceptable. Why was her magic acting so incredibly stubborn? Was she truly this pathetic, failing at a basic tutorial-level puzzle? If she kept choking on these baby steps, her epic quest for vengeance against the villainous professor was totally doomed. 5 minutes and 47 seconds. A chilling, familiar voice sliced through her panic. Deculein. He actually hadn't left. The professor glared down, demanding to know how long she planned to waste his time. Wait, did this arrogant jerk seriously stand in the shadows watching her struggle for 3 solid hours? He mercilessly roasted her for crumbling before such a basic exam. Totally crushed, she hung her head and mumbled an apology. But then the villain dropped harsh wisdom. "Let them laugh," he scoffed. "So what if the whole world prays for your downfall? Even when facing your absolute worst enemy right in front of you, your mind must remain ice cold." He smirked darkly. With a fragile mindset, she would never graze his legendary level. His deep disappointment was actually genuine. He clearly knew her hidden potential was infinitely greater than this sad display. Left completely alone, Ephraim slammed into her chair. His condescending words echoed, igniting a fiery inferno of pure rage. Screw his impossibly high standards. Who cares if she stumbled today? She was going to absolutely crush this self-doubt, be damned. "I will succeed no matter what," she roared internally. Suddenly, a blinding storm of pure mana erupted, dazzling even her own eyes. Meanwhile, the evil Deculein secretly lurked outside, watching everything. He smirked slightly. Provocation complete. Playing the cruel villain cost him hours, but sparking her magical evolution was a necessary investment. Her extreme power-up was non-negotiable for the terrifying future ahead. After all, the game's main scenario had officially kicked off, heralded by that demonic spawn on the Mountain of Darkness. When absolute darkness eventually swallowed this world, they would desperately need a main character armed with massive plot armor to survive. Only she could truly purify the demonic corruption and actually clear the game's utterly impossible main questline. Ephraim was that desperately needed fated heroine. Sure, right now she had the mental fortitude of wet paper and newbie stats, but soon she would awaken into an unstoppable magical juggernaut. Her insane scaling could literally spell his own doom, but he scoffed. Destiny, that is an excuse for losers. He was rewriting the entire script. Deculein's massive pride, point-blank, refused to ever get steamrolled by some whining rookie. Flash forward, Ephraim finally bolted down the halls. Stepping back inside, Deculein saw the absolute impossible. She had completely nailed the entire assignment, exactly 6 minutes and 25 seconds on the clock. In his log, he brutally roasted her messy technique, pointing out every single undisciplined, non-academy flaw she unfortunately possessed. But his final grade, absolutely top tier. Her raw magical output was undeniably S-class material. Ding system reward. 1 shiny store coin acquired. With his stubborn student finally gone, the professor majestically swept out, but he purposely lingered, anticipating a very special encounter. Suddenly, a massive presence loomed. Zeit stepped out, grinning widely about their incredibly long overdue reunion. Deculein's eyes narrowed sharply. Why was he here? This was Zeit von Frieden, the monstrous house patriarch, Julie's terrifying older brother, and the literal architect behind their arranged marriage. More importantly, he was the continent's third strongest fighter. A powerhouse boasting stats higher than Ganesha, making him an absolute game-changer in the main storyline. Was this titan actually here just to hunt down the legendary flaming snowstone? He wondered if snatching Julie's precious item would trigger his doom. Seriously, what did that monstrous brother-in-law want with him now? Zeit greeted him warmly, casually dropping a massive bomb about the nasty rumors surrounding Deculein's rocky relationship with his sister. His big idea, forcing everyone into an impossibly awkward family dinner to magically fix their entire relationship. Sweating internally, Deculein praised his lucky stars. The beast was still smiling quickly, agreeing that dinner sounded absolutely delightful. Zeit enthusiastically crushed his shoulder, loudly praising his lightning-fast decisions. He cheerfully promised to pick the restaurant and generously foot the entire bill without any hesitation. "I really hope to see you there, Professor," the human hurricane announced before vanishing. "Refuse." "Yeah, right." Deculein knew saying no to that muscle-brained monster was basically an instant death sentence. Zeit was a total family fanatic. Messing with his precious sibling matchmaking plans would definitely invite a brutally epic beating. Meanwhile, at the Frieden estate, Julie stubbornly refused to see her overbearing brother or that arrogant fiancé she utterly despised. Plus, she had a squad of clueless knights to brutally train. Zeit teased her about pouting over the stolen auction stone, but she fiercely denied the petty accusation with glowing red cheeks. Mid-argument footsteps approached. Zeit sighed, asking if their massive stockpile of premium metals wasn't enough to forge her shiny new gear. Julie furiously snapped. If that jerk Deculein dared gift her a sword, she would instantly detonate their political engagement. Zeit practically tore his hair out, begging his dramatic sister to stop threatening such an incredibly foolish political disaster over pride. He reminded her of their noble duty, boldly claiming that absolutely no man in the entire empire worshipped the ground she walked on like Deculein did, even if nasty rumors claimed his obsessive heart actually belonged to someone else entirely. Julie furiously rejected the idea. Zeit rolled his eyes, asking if Deculein's legendary magical incompetence was the real issue here. Talent meant absolutely nothing to him. Zeit declared that a simple family dinner would magically resolve all their ridiculous romantic drama. Frustrated beyond belief, Julie drew her blade, unleashing her swirling annoyance into a violently flawless, aura-infused sword dance. Lurking quietly in the shadows was her intensely loyal subordinate, a knight named Veron. He loudly praised her magnificent strikes. Julie flushed, apologizing for her raging tantrum, but Veron simply nodded with pure sympathetic understanding. That wicked scum didn't deserve her shadow. Veron cursed the family head for ruthlessly forcing this completely toxic, cursed marriage upon her. Ever the righteous knight, Julie gently scolded him. Trash-talking wasn't their way, and she strictly forbade Veron from staining his own honor on her account. Veron bowed his head deeply, respectfully swearing that he completely understood her noble heart. Julie finally sheathed her blade to leave, completely missing, the dangerously unhinged glint sparking in Veron's eyes. Watching his beloved captain suffer sparked a brilliantly terrible idea to prove his ultimate unmatched loyalty as her devoted subordinate. He would secretly solve everything. Meanwhile, at the Birch Council, panicked reports echoed about a horrifying demon spawning on the Mountain of Darkness. Magic existed solely to obliterate demons. With a literal monster roaming free, the mighty mages couldn't just sit back and watch safely. A senior counselor dramatically declared they must immediately summon the 12 magic families to gather under the banner of Berkt. Back at the Yukline estate, Deculein's massive wallet-draining auction hall was finally unboxed and neatly organized. Ruperen's ring would supercharge his mana regeneration, while the ancient relic necklace acted as his ultimate magical battery reserve. But of course, the grand prize of the night was being an absolute stubborn brat. He expected the flaming snowstone to be tricky, but this magical rock absolutely refused to budge against his powerful telekinesis. This insanely expensive game-breaking item was completely immune to magic. Honestly, dealing with it was quickly becoming a massive mind-numbing headache. Then it clicked. A library book mentioned that taming a legendary blade required deeply communicating with its incredibly stubborn soul. Did he seriously need to psychoanalyze a literal chunk of magical metal to unlock its hidden power? He carefully injected his mana, only to get violently zapped. The fiery rock mercilessly rejected his energy with pure, agonizing force. Gritting his teeth, he forced his comprehension skill, struggling intensely, just to absorb a pitiful 0.1% of its ancient secrets. That tiny crumb of progress ruthlessly burned 2,000 mana. At this horribly slow rate, taming it would take a whole freaking year. It was a completely frustrating start. Sighing deeply, Deculein nervously prepared himself for the dreaded family dinner. Facing Zeit and Julie gave him major anxiety. Why? because a deadly mandatory game event was scheduled to ruin his life in exactly 4 days. If the original plot ruthlessly dragged him along, he was 100% destined to die a horrible death that day. Arriving at Ponmeshul, Zeit aggressively thanked him for his punctuality. He happily chirped that Julie had stormed out early, likely waiting inside to scowl at them. Bursting through the doors, Zeit practically cheered at his sister's magnificent, shockingly elegant dress, chosen just for this supposedly romantic evening. Even Deculein was left completely breathless. Stripped of her usual clunky armor, Julie's dazzling beauty hit his heart like an absolute unstoppable truck. No wonder the original villain fell head over heels for her. Suddenly, a chilling presence praised Julie. Deculein totally froze. It was Josephine, her terrifying older sister. She played the doting sibling role perfectly, but in reality, she was an absolute terrifying final boss. Josephine was a total sociopath who would happily burn the world down to win. As the shadowy spymaster, her terrifying power easily rivaled Zeit's strength. Her only soft spot in the world, Julie. Honestly, breathing near Julie was a literal death sentence. Deculein was completely shocked he wasn't dead yet. The second he stepped inside, her intense, murderous aura locked onto him like a laser. Just existing triggered his villain death flags. With this much suffocating pressure, his survival odds were practically zero. To survive this nightmare dinner, he needed to put on the ultimate romantic performance. Before the appetizers even dropped, Zeit dropped a massive bomb. "You two have been engaged for exactly 3 years. When is the wedding?" Deculein internally panicked. Smoothly dodging, he replied that serious matrimonial matters were strictly for the elders. Zeit laughed, telling him to speak freely. Meanwhile, Josephine's piercing eyes were slicing him open. He confidently played his trap card. "The choice is entirely Julie's. If she feels uncomfortable, I will gracefully break the engagement." Zeit raised a skeptical eyebrow. "Would you really throw it all away? Over tiny relationship bumps?" The dense brother actually suggested they hug it out and magically fix their shattered dynamic. After all, the grumpy house elders would throw a massive tantrum if they split. Suddenly, Julie slammed the table. She fiercely demanded privacy and practically kicked them out. Zeit shrugged at Josephine, and the chaperones finally vanished. Julie shot out of her chair, glaring daggers. "What is your evil master plan, Deculein?" But Deculein's villain senses tingled. The door crack revealed a dark shadow. That crazy sister was definitely eavesdropping. There was zero chance the spymaster left them unsupervised. She was definitely recording this. Bingo, this was a golden ticket. The terrifying Siscon had no idea he knew her secret. If he delivered an Oscar-worthy confession of true love, he could totally smash those massive death flags. Putting on his brooding nobleman face, he claimed absolute honesty. Julie scoffed, highly doubting he even had a heart. He smoothly countered that the political runaway train was unstoppable. Their engagement had trapped them both completely. Julie's eyes flashed with fierce anger. "Plan to make my life a living hell." He openly admitted his past self, aggressively bullied the house elders into locking down this marriage, and honestly, he would do it again. Before he could monologue, Julie coldly reminded him that crossing swords with her was deadly. The original Deculein had pettily spread nasty rumors when she refused his knight command. No wonder she deeply suspected an evil trap right now. Deculein winced internally. He knew he was absolute garbage. He openly confessed his toxic crimes. He had mistaken psychotic obsession for true love, practically ruining her entire life, just to isolate her and force her dependence. Meeting her fierce glare, he totally understood why she wanted to strangle him. But now he swore his villainous stalking days were completely over. Julie crossed her arms. "I'll never believe another word out of your venomous mouth." Deculein calmly nodded. Yes, he had been a massive jerk. But he stressed that he wasn't the only greedy player on the board. Her own family was equally guilty. Especially muscle-brained Zeit. "If your family isn't arrogant, why won't they let you cancel this circus of an engagement?" Julie was left completely speechless. He smirked. "To become a guardian knight, you desperately need your family's backing." She gasped, completely stunned he knew. He chuckled darkly. "I might be an absolute scumbag, but I know exactly what you are fighting." Confused, she demanded answers. He bluntly admitted his trash personality was the exact opposite of her ideal type. Cut the dramatic nonsense and get to the point. He finally dropped the bomb. They would keep the engagement purely for show. Even if they wanted out, the messy politics had them hopelessly bound. "Use my villainous name as your ultimate shield. Exploit me until your nightly dreams come true." He promised to be her loyal guard dog. Suspicious, Julie glared. Why was he acting like a male lead? Defensively, Deculein swore he wasn't plotting some creepy scheme just for a sweet reward. "But if I must ask for one thing, just smile for me once a month." Boom. The Ice Queen blushed wildly. Even Josephine, eavesdropping in the shadows, was utterly stunned. Deculein initially spouted those lines purely to dodge a death flag. But suddenly, strange emotions stirred within. Watching Julie's flustered, adorable reaction, the truth hit him hard. His fake affection had blossomed into genuine love. Blushing fiercely, Julie stubbornly declared she wouldn't fall for his tricks. Her defensive pout merely made him chuckle warmly. Outside, Josephine cringed at the sheer cheese yet sensed his absolute sincerity. Opting to observe from the sidelines, she stayed hidden. Thus, Deculein beautifully bypassed another fatal doom flag, netting 2 sweet system coins. 3 days flashed by like lightning. The heavy, sorrowful anniversary of death had finally dawned upon him. Stepping into the gloomy cemetery, the crushing atmosphere immediately choked his lungs with profound grief. Every silent tombstone radiated pure sorrow. His pounding heart recognized this tragic resting place long before his logic. These haunting feelings didn't belong to the villainous Deculein, but the real Kim Woojin. A distant memory surfaced. That late night, Ara giggled about hiding a secret Easter egg, a hidden lore piece exclusively for Deculein's massive storyline. Woojin scolded her, warning that extra features meant brutal overtime. Ara stubbornly refused, claiming this passionate detail was her heartfelt love letter poured directly into the game's core code. Thinking his boss had lost her mind, Woojin just sighed. She never bothered listening to his logical protests anyway. She cheerfully swore this side project wouldn't be wasted. Ara confidently revealed her grand idea: Deculein's tragically deceased beautiful wife. Now trapped inside Deculein's actual flesh, Woojin realized chasing these digital breadcrumbs was his only path to lost memories. Was her game design brilliantly naive or downright cruel? The engraved name read, Ara von Vergis, a phantom bride eternally grateful for his devotion. Why ruthlessly carve her real name onto a virtual tombstone? Deculein was essentially Woojin. Why would Ara project herself as his dead fiancé? And what was the hidden meaning behind that deeply personal, heartbreaking message of gratitude? Her final digital whisper echoed, "Forget me." Dropping to his knees, those few carved letters triggered an explosive emotional tsunami. It felt like her ghost was gently breathing against his neck, unlocking a flood of buried nostalgia. He clearly saw her radiant smile, praising his rough concept art sketches, wrapping him in warm coats during freezing crunches, holding his tired hands, confessing her love. She remained his loyal anchor for 7 years. Overwhelming nostalgia forced burning tears down the cold villain's cheeks. Suddenly, a menacing sneer echoed from the shadows. "Found you at last, you arrogant mage scum." Later, strolling back under the bleeding sunset, Deculein's icy facade had perfectly snapped back, erasing every trace of his emotional breakdown. Possessing a ruthless villain's stoic mindset was insanely convenient. A sinister silhouette blocked his path. He instantly recognized that ugly mug. Lockhart, the infamous mage killer. Lockhart mocked him, laughing at how pathetically clueless and deeply arrogant this noble wizard looked. A major red flag triggered. In the original lore, Lockhart was a terrifying mid-tier nightmare boss, an absolute grim reaper specifically designed to slaughter fragile mage players. His terrifying cheat skill was absolute magic nullification. As the assassin lunged, Woojin cursed. Anti-magic was a ridiculously broken cheat ability. Lockhart's passive aura required 0 activation requirements. Not even a single touch, just standing nearby instantly deleted all spells. "You are dead meat, magic boy," Lockhart cackled. But the supposedly helpless scholar fiercely held his ground. The madman relentlessly slashed his daggers. No wonder squishy spellcasters absolutely pissed their robes facing this guy. Going for a lethal strike, the assassin suddenly ate a brutal, bone-crunching right hook. Lockhart staggered back, spitting blood. The real brawl had finally begun. Flashback to a few days ago. Spending 10 hard-earned system coins, Deculein unlocked the mono-quality upgrade, a game-breaking perk that drastically reduced his core energy consumption. His physical stats violently skyrocketed, forcing him to completely recalibrate his telekinesis. He could now wield hyper-pure mana with utterly devastating, ungodly kinetic force. His brutal morning workout routines had forged his body into steel, a complete monstrous evolution of both magic and muscle. Now the mighty Lockhart lay utterly crushed. Ding. 2 sweet coins rewarded. The system upgrades had magically fortified his iron body. The poor, squishy assassin got completely stat-checked, making close-quarters combat an absolute joke. Spitting teeth, the broken killer weakly cursed the escaping mage, screaming they were all treacherous, god-forsaken heretics. He spat that the floating island of Berkt wasn't a magic tower, but a glorified loony bin full of magical parasites. Deculein smirked. This broken assassin Rockhark had a seriously unhinged grudge against anyone waving a magic wand. The pieces clicked. Was this guy a Scarlet? The assassin flinched hard, barking back, how could he possibly know that? Legend says the Scarlet race earned their ominous title from the blood-red membrane, completely wrapping their tiny newborn bodies. A tragic walking curse fueled entirely by innate demonic blood. Forced into shadows, they naturally despise mages. After all, magic was literally invented for relentless demon hunting, this bitter mage versus Scarlet rivalry. It acts as a massive lore drop and constitutes a core storyline branch in this crazy game world. Merely existing is a death sentence for a Scarlet. Somewhere out there right now, a brutal racial cleansing is probably ripping through the streets. Surprisingly, Deculein played the empathy card, claiming he totally understood the brutal oppression crushing his soul, but murdering an innocent mage. That just proved this guy had become the exact terrifying monster he desperately hated all along. "Shut your mouth," Rock roared, demanding the arrogant noble skip the boring lecture and just end his miserable life immediately. Deculein coolly countered that Scarlets carried no inherent sin at all. The assassin scoffed, demanding how a stuck-up mage could know anything about it. The answer: he was a Yukline, a noble who practically sweats pure elegance. "What does that have to do with anything?" the assassin snapped. Deculein smirked. A Yukline only ever loses their absolute cool when actively fighting a demon. Since ancient times, his family hunted demons. The mere sight of one makes their noble blood boil with pure, uncontrollable rage and murderous instinct. So Deculein mused, exactly how did I look during our brawl? Did I seem furious? Did I take the bait? Rock grumbled a hard no, definitively proving he was entirely human, not some raging demonic beast. Was this the legendary composure of high society? Deculein gave a slick nod, promising his logic was flawlessly, completely sound. Suddenly, heavy footsteps echoed. Deculein instantly booted the assassin in the face, knocking him out cold for a nice, non-lethal arrest without any more messy, unnecessary dying involved. Enter Senior Inspector Roa, completely out of breath. He excitedly clapped for that brutal finishing kick, frantically checking if the assassin targeted other victims. Brushing off the chaos, Deculein casually flexed his telekinesis, ripping raw metal straight from the earth and a nearby tree expertly molding the floating scraps like weightless clay. The inspector swooned over the elegant magic. Deculein nonchalantly forged custom magical wire, mocking standard handcuffs as utterly useless against a wildly unpredictable threat like Rockhark. When asked about his suspiciously fast response time, Roa confessed he wasn't just patrolling the area. Someone had secretly tipped them off instead. And it definitely was not our guy Deculein. A hidden eavesdropper had called the cops, still lurking heavily in the suffocating shadows. Deculein strutted away, casually wishing Roa good luck, secretly relieved his hands were clean of blood because he genuinely did not want to hurt anyone else. He could sense her lingering presence nearby. Flash forward to tomorrow. Yariel barged in, dropping a massive 15-year-old magical bombshell regarding the infamous Berked Island. "Did you seriously come just to deliver mail?" he sighed. She snapped back that he never reads her messages anyway, demanding some precious face-to-face time. It was his absolute duty as the grand household head to finally participate. But our lazy lord shot her down, claiming boring political nonsense wasn't his problem. Trembling with annoyance, she revealed the juicy details. A wild demon spawned on Dark Mountain, and the Berked elites were panicking, summoning every magical house for an emergency chat. Ding. The system slapped Deculein with a brand new main mission. With only 1 week on the clock, the rules allowed him a tiny elite entourage of exactly 2 companions, including a bodyguard. Yariel eagerly offered up Jeff as muscle. Deculein laughed out loud, mercilessly roasting Jeff as a glorified chauffeur who practically faints at the mere thought of actually holding a deadly weapon. Pouting at his ruthless honesty, she nervously warned that traveling completely solo was basically suicidal. The treacherous road ahead was completely uncharted territory for her screaming bad news everywhere. "Are you actually worried about me?" he playfully teased. She totally panicked aggressively, sputtering that she never said that out loud, but his untimely death would force her to manage the massive estate entirely alone, which absolutely would not work. Going full boss mode, she hijacked the bodyguard duty, entirely promising to outsource the critical escort job to a highly trusted guild. Cut to the dusty Freyden Knight base. The fierce commander Julie was whipping recruits. Sweating bullets, a shady man nudged Veron, desperately whispering for advice on a totally unexpected massive headache. Like a ghost, the man materialized from the darkest shadows. "Dude, at least fake a cough next time," Veron yelped, trying to calm his racing heart. The spooky guy sighed, explaining they had just caught a high-paying job from the Grand Estate, but it smelled like a massive trap, leaving him totally paralyzed with heavy doubt. Waving it off, Veron swore the stressed vice commander was overthinking, trusting Julie's flawless capabilities. "That is exactly the disaster," the man groaned, refusing to face Julie because this cursed mission literally demanded they escort her absolute worst nightmare, Deculein. On paper, their mission was escorting the entire train, but obviously he was the VIP. The vice commander guessed Deculein wanted them to totally refuse, but Veron stubbornly pushed to accept hyping up train guard duty as an elite flex. Success meant massive clout for their cavalry, plus some much-needed cash for their private squad. The vice commander pointed out their boss deeply hated Deculein, but Veyron brushed that drama aside. He claimed their stoic commander was strictly professional. Convinced, the vice commander rushed to immediately report everything. But Veyron was definitely cooking up something. Now Berkt sits 3,500 meters high up north. It is the ultimate icy VIP zone where elite mages called counselors just sit around and chill. Berkt dictates to every magic academy and tower out there, dropping absolute rules that even the giant floating magic island has to instantly obey. These counselors flex so much power they are literally dubbed the pillars of the magical world. But this epic assembly drops like a rare event only every few decades. Getting an invite is the ultimate mage flex, basically the magical equivalent of winning a massive golden trophy for your family. And that is despite Berkt being nicknamed the Mage Cemetery. Later at the freezing station, Julie and the vice commander stood awkwardly waiting for Deculein. Veyron hyped up his arrival, dragging his nervously sweating assistant Professor Allen along. Deculein casually noted the April snow falling around them, confirming this freezing place was definitely the far north. The Knight Commander politely thanked him for traveling. He proudly declared the Freyden Knights would lock down the entire train from this station onward. Meanwhile, Julie was a blushing, trembling mess, awkwardly stuttering that she would totally protect him. She promised him a completely chill VIP trip, suddenly panicking as she recalled their secret little promise. She had vowed to make him smile monthly, but right now her own face was doing weird gymnastics. Was her smile looking incredibly creepy and forced? Should she show teeth or keep her mouth shut? Completely clueless, the vice commander assumed she was trembling from pure hatred, while still totally admiring her fierce pride. Before the vice commander could even speak, Julie's right-hand guy, Veyron, totally stole the spotlight. He proudly announced he was personally joining the VIP escort squad for Deculein. The other two knights were basically just background NPCs there, only because this mission was epic. The vice commander heavily flexed that Veyron was their absolute best guy, overflowing with pure confidence. Deculein seriously doubted the hype, triggering his ultra-sharp perception just to be safe. But scanning him revealed absolutely nothing special, leaving Deculein thinking he was just being weirdly paranoid. Veyron smoothly noted that fancy mages always bring along their own personal bodyguards. So, one guard per train car, he bravely claimed the professor's cabin, and Deculein casually agreed to let him play hero. Julie finally said her goodbyes, wishing them well. But then she violently whipped around, flashing the most hilariously awkward, toothy forced smile ever. The vice commander sweat dropped, asking if she was broken. Deculein hid a soft smirk, amused. She actually kept her promise. Hours later, the train cabin was completely silent and boring. Deculein told his exhausted assistant to go ahead and nap since the ride was eternally long. Alan nodded, crashing instantly, and was soon snoring totally dead to the absolute world. Deculein darkly remembered that the Berkt assembly doubled as a literal graveyard for mages. Such a terrifying nickname totally ruined Berkt's fancy reputation as the magical world's backbone. It was all because of a nasty little surprise called the train ambush. Out of his million massive death flags, this was definitely a major one to dodge. Surviving meant having insanely good luck and big brain reading skills. Basically, you had to gamble on picking the absolute safest train heading to Berkt. If he wanted to cheat death, he could just throw money at underworld brokers for golden survival spoilers. The original villain Deculein totally would have paid to win, but that cheat code was broken now. Knowing the massive danger, he quietly prepped his own hardcore survival kit before boarding. He shamelessly spammed his comprehension skill instantly, downloading the legendary fighter Estron's martial arts manual. Deculein glanced at the snoring, Alan totally shocked since the fanboy was too hyped to sleep earlier. Just days ago, Deculein personally recruited him for this deadly Berkt field trip, making sure to warn him he could totally chicken out if he wanted to live. But Alan literally cried, happy tears, crying out what a massive honor it was to follow him. Deculein actually laughed, threatening to leave him behind because he was a total germaphobe who was tired of Alan constantly catching embarrassing sneezes and runny colds. Sniffling and bawling, Alan accepted anyway. Deculein was totally baffled. He never expected this crying mess to agree, guessing the kid secretly had some crazy, fierce ambition. Miraculously, the magic train reached a station completely intact. But wait, this wasn't their correct stop. Only one stop left before Berkt. So far, so good. But a true villain never drops his guard. Looking at his paranoid level of prep, he almost felt silly. Was he overthinking this? He rocked a custom jork suit. It wasn't just fashion. With his Midas touch, his defense stats were totally broken. He literally bullied a legendary tailor into making it just to spam his Midas touch on it. Stashed nearby, a deadly wood steel throwing knife. He even sneakily buffed the train's metal walls. Poor Alan wasn't left out. The assistant was wrapped in a cloak, completely maxed out by the skill. Yet Deculein sweated bullets. Because he spammed his skill so much, his mana pool was literally running on fumes. Should he have hoarded that precious mana for a real boss fight? Whatever. Better safe than sorry. If it is a peaceful trip, then it's an absolute win. He prayed for a boring ride. But jinxing yourself is a massive Manhwa guarantee. Boom. The train ride literally went up in flames. But wait, let's rewind a few days before this explosion. Sylvia and her father were traveling. He nagged her about grinding her books instead of magic tower duties. She huffed, arguing that skipping classes gave her massive anxiety. She had to cram using that massive tome. Her old man smirked. A future archmage couldn't slack off. The grind to the top never stops. She nodded firmly. Legendary magic power didn't just fall from the sky without intense effort. Still, her rival Ephorine occupied her thoughts. But missing Professor Deculein's lectures, that was the real tragedy. She side-eyed her dad. Why the insane rush to the Berked assembly? They could have totally slept in. Glytheon turned dead serious. If she knew the road's true nickname, the Cemetery of Mages, she wouldn't complain. Sylvia called it a fake urban legend. But her dad instantly shut that down. It was a literal death trap. Every assembly claimed lives. 11 top mages were wiped out last time. An invite was the ultimate flex for the top 20 noble houses. Surviving meant etching your name into history, but ghosting the invite, you would be permanently blacklisted. Absolute social and political suicide. He dropped a heavy question. How do you casually ruin a top-tier family? Suddenly it clicked in her brain. It was a brutal battleground. New money mages ambushed the old bloodline houses, desperate to steal their thrones. One wrong step meant game over. That constant terrifying anxiety was exactly why they had bolted so early. Glytheon had inside intel about a massive train ambush. He wasn't taking any chances with his heir's life. He needed her to wake up. The magical society wasn't a fairy tale, it was a cutthroat survival game. As an original legacy house, they had massive targets on their backs. The old guard always paid in blood. The worst part, getting assassinated here was legally ruled as natural causes. Snap back to the present. Deculein's first-class lounge suddenly erupted in catastrophic hellfire. Instincts kicked in. Alan woke up screaming. But incredibly, Deculein was casually levitating the entire derailed train. Thank the Manhwa gods for his cheat-level memory. Mastering telekinesis and martial arts just saved his skin. Outside, the masked assassins were sweating. Was that snobby professor seriously carrying a train with his mind? Surprising, yes. But entirely expected for a boss. Smelling a massive bonus paycheck, the greedy grunts swung through the smoking wreckage, flooding the cabin like absolute maniacs. Deculein called them idiots. He instantly unleashed his floating barrage of throwing knives. The ambushers walked into a meat grinder. He elegantly picked them off, shredding their limbs like wet paper. The assassins were totally flabbergasted. Meanwhile, Alan panicked so loud that Deculein casually karate chopped him into dreamland. He coolly ordered Varan to drag the snoring boy to safety. Evacuate the survivors. I will handle the trash. Varan vanished with the package. Deculein blinked. Was Alan's neck always that floppy? Oops, his Iron Man buff made him accidentally overpowered. He would handle the accident later. First, exterminate these annoying bugs. Deculein adjusted his cuffs with a chilling smirk. Since you crashed my ride, you will all die naturally. Total massacre mode engaged. Outside, Varan dumped Alan safely and just watched his boss solo the mobs. Minutes later, the cabin was a graveyard. Deculein slumped down, panting. Being a badass was exhausting work. Tanking explosions and soloing assassins drained him completely. He stared in horror at his status. Only 10 mana points remained. Varan slipped through the shattered carriage wall. Just as you predicted, sir, the knight reported with a smirk. Perfect timing. Deculein nodded coolly. Now, let's make our grand exit before things get messy. Wait. Something felt incredibly off. Varan's aura had completely shifted from just moments ago. His razor-sharp senses flared. A deadly villainous fate was brewing. Had this treacherous death flag been lurking in the shadows all along? The moment Deculein blinked, Varan drew his blade. I am thrilled you survived, Professor, he sneered, because now my sword claims your life. Who pulls your strings? Deculein demanded calmly. Did Julie actually order this pathetic betrayal? Silence? The knight barked, his eyes blazing. Utter my lady's name again, and I will strike you down without a shred of mercy. Lady Julie is the epitome of honor. She would never plot such a cowardly trap, Varan roared. Do not dare tarnish her shining reputation. I will gladly lay down my life for her. So Julie was innocent. But Deculein mentally sweat dropped. Could he actually overpower Varan, one of the absolute strongest knights in their entire order? With barely 10 mana points remaining, his former escort charged fiercely. Deculein narrowly evaded, realizing he had to play his absolute craziest card. He snapped his fingers instantly, canceling his telekinesis. The massive train violently shuddered and nosedived straight off the treacherous cliff. Meanwhile, safely in Sylvia's room, Sirio, the Iliad house's loyal knight, offered her famous Berked ice cream. She politely waved it away. Has absolutely everyone arrived? She asked. Sirio smiled warmly. Everyone is here, except the Yukline and the Reincarnated families, my lady. Waiting for a certain someone, he teased. Sylvia sighed heavily. Absolutely no one, she immediately scoffed. Laughing it off, Sirio excused himself. Now entirely alone, her mind immediately betrayed her, drifting straight to thoughts of the annoying Deculein. Honestly, she had not meant to stalk him earlier. She was merely visiting the quiet cemetery to pay respects at her mother's grave, Sierra von Element Iliad. It was her secret sanctuary, a place to pour out her hidden feelings from time to time. She grumbled mentally. Professor Deculein was a total menace, burying them in ridiculous mountains of homework as if only his class existed. Crunch, a sudden noise snapped her to attention. Peeking around a gravestone, her jaw totally dropped. Deculein was in the cemetery too. Even slumping in the shadows, his ridiculous noble aura shined. She spotted her strict professor instantly. But seriously, what was he doing here? The guy totally did not fit the sentimental graveyard vibe at all. As Deculein slowly rose, Sylvia literally gasped. The man was weeping. The ultimate Ice King, that notoriously cold, strict, and flawless villain, was actually shedding genuine tears, her brain totally short-circuited at the bizarre sight. She always painted him as an arrogant, soulless jerk. Yet he clearly harbored deep, agonizing memories of someone precious slipping away. That tearful image burned into her mind. Then, a dark rumor echoed. Her father had mentioned vicious train ambushes on the Berkt route. Anxiety suddenly spiked in her chest. Ever since Deculein's intense lecture, she had been obsessively practicing a highly complex magical formula. By activating a magic stone, she could theoretically summon the 3 pure properties of magic, true origin forms stemming directly from her core. Sparks flew brilliant crimson, deep azure, and emerald green. The 3 pure mana colors spiraled beautifully using the stone as an anchor. Success. She triumphantly molded those 3 primary hues into her very first masterpiece, a dazzling magical little bird. From today on, you are swift, she beamed. She mentally commanded her familiar to fly toward the danger zone and broadcast everything it witnessed. Meanwhile, down in the wrecked train car, Deculein was having a remarkably terrible day. Miraculously, the brutal crash had lodged the carriage firmly, sparing him a one-way ticket into the endless gaping abyss below. Several bones were definitely shattered. Ouch. But relying on his absurdly tough steel body, he knew his recovery speed would be utterly monstrous. Shockingly, Varan had survived too. Deculein desperately sidestepped a lethal slash. Hoping to end it, he launched a telekinetic knife strike. But Varan's blinding aura violently deflected it. You are frustratingly stubborn like a roach, Varan spat, swinging his heavy blade for another fatal strike. In an absolute flash, Deculein spun away, dodging death. This guy was an absolute monster. Varan's current power completely eclipsed his own. Even burning his very life force victory looked like a pathetic delusion. Retreating was impossible. His resolute trait aggressively rejected cowardice. Deculein would never falter in the face of such absolute danger. Steel clashed. Varan brutally shattered one of Deculein's flying daggers, yet the deadly dance only intensified. Crack. Every single knife was completely destroyed. Well, this is comically terrible, he realized grimly. The executioner's blade descended. It was game over. Would he magically wake up in his modern office? Or was this truly his permanent bitter end? A massive fountain of blood exploded. Right then, Little Swift magically fluttered in catching the gruesome climax on camera. Just as Deculein fully embraced the sweet release of death, reality dramatically warped around him. The blood was not his. Varan shrieked in absolute agony, his entire hand violently ripped away. This gruesome twist became Deculein's perfect window to strike back. Running on fumes, he blasted Varan straight through the carriage, sending him tumbling toward the abyss. Varan dug his dagger in dangling for dear life. Meanwhile, Deculein strolled over, dominating the high ground. What did you do? Varan barked. Deculein just shrugged. Honestly, he was totally clueless why this guy hated him. They literally had zero beef. Varan spat back that he just wanted Deculein away from his precious lady. Deculein scoffed. Was this crazy simp behavior all for Julie? She'd absolutely hate this. What does she even mean to you? Deculein asked. Varan glared, claiming a villain could never grasp it. Cue the tragic flashback. A local mom profusely thanked Julie for saving her precious kid, which Julie humbly brushed off. A true knight never ignores a cry for help. Meanwhile, a restrained Varan screamed his innocence, blaming the spoiled brat for everything. The snobby mom shrieked that her angelic Jason was innocent, instantly pointing fingers at the filthy commoner. The little brat smirked, so Varan casually offered him a death wish. The furious mother threatened to drag this unhinged street rat straight to the royal guards. Calling him a pathetic worm, she accused him of breaking in just to terrorize her precious angel. Varan laughed. Did he really look like he scaled her giant wall? She scoffed, calling it typical rat behavior. Julie side-eyed him. Could this scrawny twig actually climb a fortress wall? Stepping up, Julie took custody of the troublemaker, assuring the snobby noblewoman she could scurry back home now. Julie dragged the kicking, screaming Varan away while he threw an absolute tantrum about the brat starting it. Suddenly, Julie stopped walking. She admitted the Baroness was famously toxic, so his story probably had merit. Varan muttered it was not entirely true either, but Julie hit him with reality. Wall jumping and assault were still totally illegal. Then, she totally caught him off guard and scooped him up. She offered him a cheat code to life, follow her, learn some actual manners, and become a glorious knight. Starstruck Varan asked the real question, is there free food? Getting a yes, he instantly declared her his ultimate boss. Sadly, his gloomy, edgy boy aura made him socially awkward with the other knights. Only Julie actually checked on this walking red flag. To Varan, she was absolute perfection. A flawless hero charging into battle, saving folks for free, and radiating pure justice. His fanboy devotion simply leveled up every single day. Back to reality, Varan confessed his obsessive fanboy crush was getting way too heavy to carry. He fully believed this trash-tier villain would ruin Julie, so Deculein had to die. Deculein internally agreed. The old him totally caused this mess, but plot twist, he was basically a new man now. The transmigrator inside was fixing this villain's dumpster fire legacy, surviving without wrecking the entire world. Deculein actually offered his hand. Take my hand, he offered, promising. Julie was totally safe now. He just needed a little trust. But the villainous aura was just too strong. Seeing the doom flags, Deculein asked if negotiations were officially dead. Absolutely not, Varan spat. I will end you the second I get the chance. Calling him an idiot who would only traumatize Julie, Deculein ruthlessly launched a throwing knife. Miles away, Julie's night senses tingled. When questioned, she brushed off the eerie sinking feeling. Her deputy told her to relax, since her edgy subordinate was super talented. She nodded, totally missing the massive death flags. Meanwhile, Varan plummeted into the abyss, dramatically praying for his master's ultimate happiness. A familiar summoned bird spectated everything. Viewing through it, Sylvia gasped, thinking Deculein had just team-killed his escort. But upon instant replay, she realized the crazy knight attacked first. It was pure self-defense. Suddenly, her own guard interrupted the stream, warning her the big meeting was starting. She panicked, wondering if Deculein would actually miss the VIP event. Back at the tracks, the head of security barked for a status update on that massive explosion. The scene team sighed, claiming these chaotic terror attacks were basically normal during burst assemblies. Any casualties? The report was wild. 0 major injuries. But the infamously evil Professor Deculein and his escort had completely vanished into thin air. The traumatized survivors were completely useless. The deputy frowned, pointing at the unconscious guy sprawled on the floor. They awkwardly guessed he had just passed out from pure shock. Another babbled about a heroic knight and a literally floating train that smoothly carried them to safety. The deputy raised a skeptical eyebrow. A floating train. They frantically nodded, even shoving photographic proof right in her face. Her jaw dropped. Was this some kind of insane magic? Suddenly, a voice dropped an absolute bombshell. The knight Varan was totally dead. He had ruthlessly targeted Deculein, but the boss somehow survived the ordeal. The deputy whipped her head around wildly. Who the heck was using telepathy? It definitely was not these crying survivors. They pointed back at the newly arriving survivor, Professor Deculein. Internally, he was sweating buckets. Without that insane stroke of luck, he would definitely be a corpse right now. If not for that mysterious unknown help, he never could have kicked Varan right off that cliff. Still, his mana was completely tapped out. He groaned internally, desperately wondering who his overpowered secret guardian actually was. The deputy blinked in shock, simply relieved he was still breathing. Introducing herself as Lilia Premien from the strict security office, she explained she needed to fully interrogate him. Deculein casually asked the time. 3:30 in the freaking morning, she quickly replied. Internal panic spiked. He only had 6 hours left. Lilia started firing off questions, but he totally cut her off. Was this the only train heading to Berkt? Annoyed by his aristocratic rudeness, she growled that there was absolutely no other way. She crossed her arms angrily, demanding answers about the rogue escort knight right this second. But when she blinked, poof, the guy had straight up vanished into thin air. She frantically yelled at the others, asking where the heck he went. Did he just casually cast a high-tier acceleration spell? Her mind was totally blown. He controlled a whole train with telekinesis, wrecked assassins in Varan, and still had mana to teleport away like a boss. Is his mana pool literally infinite? She gulped hard. This monster was definitely the legendary Deculein that Lockhart hyped up so much. Meanwhile, the Berkt conference room was packed with impatient VIPs. Glytheon tapped his watch. It was almost 9:53, time for everyone to finally gather. But Deculein was totally missing. The chief counselor stepped up, thanking everyone while oozing an aura so terrifyingly dense that poor Sylvia started trembling. What an absolute monster. The legendary incredible mana of Zekton, the great counselor of Berkt. He was once the top pick to become an archmage. but chose the ultimate hermit lifestyle instead. For Sylvia, reaching that legendary archmage level felt like an impossibly distant fantasy. The counselor began the dreadful tense roll call. First was Glytheon of the Iliade house, then Ainsel of the Bra house, Byron of the Vayrad house, and Ehelm of the Rewainde house. Finally, he called the Yukline house, but the seat was glaringly empty. The great counselor declared coldly, "I will call Deculein 3 exact times. Miss the third call, and it counts as treason." He would be brutally expelled from the prestigious House of Mages. The room immediately erupted in juicy, malicious gossip. They whispered that the Yuklines getting booted wouldn't be shocking, especially after a massive 200-year ghosting streak. Completely predictable trash, they sneered. Looks like the nasty rumors about his absolute zero talent were totally spot on. Sylvia glared around. These trash talkers were utterly pathetic. But thinking of her lonely, misunderstood professor, her anxiety completely shot through the roof. Call 1, call 2. The peanut gallery cruelly laughed while Sylvia held her breath in pure panic. Call 3. Suddenly, bang, the massive double doors swung wide open. The entire room gasped in absolute shock as Deculein made his epic entrance. Casually brushing the snow off his perfectly fixed hair like a total boss, he proudly announced himself as Deculein von Grahan Yukline. The stunned silence was deafening before the meeting quickly kicked off. First up on the chaotic agenda, the terrifying demon recently spotted on Black Mountain. The stakes were way higher than that disastrous capital incident. Every magic school was strictly ordered to team up with the Holy Church immediately to handle this mega crisis. Plus, elite mages were being heavily deployed to all the shady danger zones. Boom, handled in record time with basically zero arguments. Even Ansel, the representative wielding divine authority, voiced her full agreement. Not a single noble dared to object, so the dark matter was officially settled on the spot. Break time finally rolled around. Deculein slumped in his seat, secretly crying tears of pure, unadulterated exhaustion. He had literally sprinted like an absolute madman to avoid missing the critical meeting. Now his mana was totally empty, and his battery was at 0%. Yet somehow he was amazed his outward appearance was still flawlessly handsome, completely hiding his miserable, dying internal state. His aristocratic passive skills kept him looking annoyingly perfect and cool. Sneaking out of the room, poor Alan rushed over, sobbing apologies for being late and desperately begging to know if the professor was okay. The guards had totally blocked Alan out. Deculein just put on his best poker face. "I am completely fine," he lied coolly, telling him not to sweat it. But deep down, Deculein's villainous radar was screaming. This boy's identity was totally sus. He couldn't trust this kid one bit, even if he didn't know why yet. What was Alan's deal? Seriously, what was his hidden agenda? Channeling a classic mobster movie from his past life, Deculein locked eyes with Alan. From now on, the kid needed to stick to him like glue. Because you know the golden rule, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. He had to watch this walking plot twist carefully. After their quick breather, the stressful political roundtable kicked off once again. Next on the headache agenda, dealing with that creepy priest of the blood shroud who just crashed their party. Deculein instantly smelled trouble. This political minefield wasn't going to be a quick and easy chat like the last one. Bam! Right out the gate, someone slammed the table with blazing fury. Enter Beton, the hot-headed boss of the Bayad family. He aggressively barked that the Crimson bloodline was nothing but absolute trash. He ranted that they were literal pests breeding in the shadows and rotting their precious lands like a nasty plague. Cecil of the Brand family wasn't having it. Got any proof for that wild claim? After all, nobody even had a magic scanner to tell the Crimsons apart. Despite logic, some stubborn nobles stubbornly muttered about just inventing a magical tracking device for them. They whined that a method must exist. The Crimson race just had to be completely wiped off the map. Cecil cut back and absolutely appalled. How could they casually discuss genociding an entire bloodline? She coldly warned these hotheads to watch their filthy mouths before they started a war. Deculein simply watched the circus unfold. He knew this spicy topic would be a total dumpster fire from day one. A super salty Beton grumbled that those sneaky Crimsons were already swarming together and plotting in the shadows. He swore they had a secret boss plotting doom, but Cecil fired back, calling out his paranoid conspiracy theories. Yet the peanut gallery of other nobles just listened, nodding along with Beton's angry rants. Beton sneered, asking if her brain was turned off. He blamed her naive hesitation for a mountain of dead mages. Suddenly, the heavy hitter Glytheon entered the chat. He turned the spotlight straight to Deculein of the terrifying Yukline family. Glytheon praised the Yuklines as legendary demon hunters who had crushed both Crimsons and underworld beasts for generations. Deculein smirked internally. As a top-tier villainous noble, he was basically the master of this political chessboard. He knew blind, stupid hatred without a single drop of logic was basically a VIP ticket to ultimate doom. Even if they couldn't instantly solve the Crimson drama, he desperately needed to hit the brakes on these idiot warmongers. Why? Because he had an epic survival quest to clear. The real final boss of this world wasn't the Crimson race. With icy calm, Deculein admitted that historically, the Crimsons were definitely seen as enemies. But after fact-checking the ancient lore, he realized this entire beef was one massive, embarrassing misunderstanding. 237 years ago, during that famous Ludran witch disaster, an innocent lady was totally framed. That sparked a massive witch hunt, slaughtering innocent Crimsons. So they fought back, trapping everyone in an endless bloody revenge loop. Then he exposed the tragedy from 60 years ago. It wasn't monsters, it was just dirty, greedy, political scheming. It mysteriously happened right after a shiny monostone jackpot was found on Crimson territory. Betten scoffed at the massive irony. Rich coming from you, Deculein, especially since the Yukline family proudly snatched that exact same mine. Plus, he stubbornly barked that Crimson veins were literally cursed with nasty demonic energy. As top-tier demon slayers, the mighty Yuklines should have been the first guys to smell that dark magic. Deculein smoothly countered. His family's epic legacy was hunting actual demons, not bullying the Crimsons. But Betten acted like a broken record, blindly screaming that they were 100% demons. Deculein's eyes turned ice cold. Are you really ready to bet your life on that blind confidence? He dropped a mic drop warning. Reckless loudmouths often turn into the very monsters they fear, and just like that, the chaotic meeting hit a dead end. The fiery debate was forcefully put on ice for another dramatic day. Post-meeting Glythian played the sweet dad sighing that he tragically had to ditch his adorable daughter again. He promised a reunion at the next big council, gently checking if his little girl could survive solo. Sylvia blinked in total confusion. What was he on about? Weren't big kids like her supposed to have their own fancy rooms anyway? Glythian just chuckled lightly, casually saying he would see her the very next day. He casually warned her about Bircht's crazy mana levels. When the sun goes down completely wild and spooky, magic anomalies come out to play. So he warned her to memorize the creepy hotel guidelines. Sylvia just brushed it off like it was no big deal. Fast forward to bedtime, our confident mage casually unrolled the spooky rulebook while chilling in bed. She rolled her eyes, convinced it was just cheap ghost stories to spook literal toddlers. Basically just sleep and don't panic. Still being a total prodigy, she casually tossed up a high-tier security ward just in case. Fast forward to midnight, thirst striking, but the second she stepped out past her magical barrier, reality decided to glitch out. The hallway literally folded in on itself, morphing into a freaky alien dimension. Cue the massive sweat drop. Did she just accidentally break the universe? Panic. Booting up. Wait. Rule number. Whatever explicitly warned guests to stay glued to their mattresses until the sun came up. Yep, she had spectacularly failed the easiest instruction ever. The manual promised night wanderers a one-way ticket to nowhere. Exactly like that freaky second corridor that once kidnapped her for days. Her undefeated streak was officially crumbling into dust. Plus, hanging out near the crazy powerful Elder Assembly meant the ambient magic was absurdly toxic. Cue massive regrets for ignoring literal red flags. Still, our genius mage took a deep breath, trying desperately to play it cool. Spoiler alert. Her cool act lasted exactly 2 seconds. Some foul ghost juice flooded the hall, making her sprint for her life towards a staircase. Wait, this hotel only has 1 floor. Massive horror movie vibes. Another spooky rule flashed in her mind. Phantom stairs are a trap. Do not engage. Mid-sprint, an open door peeked out. Rule reminder, never look inside late-night mystery rooms unless you want to get cursed. Her inner screaming was reaching absolute maximum volume. Desperate, she banged on a random door for salvation. Too bad the rules strictly told guests to ignore crying ghosts at night. So obviously nobody answered. Until miraculously some absolute madman swung their door wide open. Enter the majestic Professor Deculein. Seeing his lost puppy of a student, he casually invited her into his safe zone. Blushing intensely, Sylvia mumbled a pathetic apology about sleepwalking into a cursed alternate dimension. Deculein just sighed, noting that this wacky magic hotspot always made local spirits go completely insane. Then dropped the classic, "You should have actually read the manual, kid." Seriously, this dude's stoic poker face was legendary. Not a single sweat drop. Only a totally overpowered noble could casually ignore the hotel's lethal warning signs to save her. Without his boss-level intervention, she'd definitely be wandering that creepy back room forever. Suddenly, a creepy ghost lunged at the entrance. The professor didn't even blink, ordering her to chill. With zero effort, his telekinetic sword zipped through the air, completely obliterating the pesky phantom. Starstruck Sylvia gasped, questioning if you could actually murder an already dead poltergeist. Mr. Humble brushed it off, calling it a basic specialized extermination trick for annoying spectral bugs. He even added a flex. The spell was never meant for killing, he just improvised. Typical overpowered protagonist behavior. Going full nerd mode, Sylvia scanned his mana and spotted some spicy elemental cocktails mixed in. We're talking spicy, lightning, heavy metal traits topped off with a creepy splash of goblin fire. Catching her intense staring, he actually threw her a rare compliment for her sharp magic radar. But wait, he wasn't even making eye contact while praising her. Such a cold shoulder. Her inner tsundere flared up. Should she fake a massive screw-up just to force him to look? But then he verbally wrecked her coldly, pointing out a massive flaw in her fiery wind combo spell. Pouting defensively, she demanded the cheat sheet. He hit her with the classic, "Figure it out yourself, kid." Jealousy activated. She whined that he totally handed her rival the answers on a platter. Wrong again. He calmly corrected her, revealing that her annoying rival actually solved it completely solo. He delivered some epic sensei wisdom, telling her to chill out and trust the daily grind. Hard work equals big level ups. Just take baby steps instead of trying to skip the entire tutorial phase like a speedrunner. Especially since she was literally top 3 in global talent, that rare ego boost completely short-circuited her brain. Growing up, everyone hyped her as this unstoppable prodigy who would easily conquer the magic world. Growing up, she had heard that exact same boring praise a million times. Just empty flattery and meaningless noise. But Deculeine's words hit entirely different. They carried a massive weight she absolutely couldn't ignore. Banned from nighttime hallway roaming, Deculein pulled an all-nighter at the desk while Sylvia crashed in his bed. During this midnight vigil, a bizarre energy pulsed from outside. Stepping out to investigate, he quickly realized the truth. The legendary Magnate of Wealth had just been activated. Outside the main Birched meeting zone, the rest of this mountain was literally completely blocked off. Jackpot. A chance for rare loot. As he strolled through the creepy forest, a local ghost tried to pull a jump scare. Deculeine's reaction. He just kept walking utterly unfazed. The ghost spammed its scary faces, but Deculein didn't even blink, maintaining his legendary stone-cold poker face. Deadpan, he apologized for bumping into it, then casually asked if it had seen any epic loot lying around. Traumatized by this absolute psychopath's indifference, the ghost fled, crying. Soon after, Deculein finally spotted his prize. Behold a purified chunk of a mana tree that got directly nuked by lightning. Already bursting with natural mana, the lightning strike purified it into absurdly rare top-tier crafting material for overpowered magic. Inspecting the epic drop, Deculein realized this insane loot completely shattered all his wildest expectations. Ever since dropping into this isekai world, he had been grinding his magical research 24/7. His garbage-tier magical talent was dragging him down. But crafting a wand with this wood, his growth rate would absolutely skyrocket. Talk about an insane lucky drop. This haul blew his entire trip's expectations totally out of the water. Next day, the assembly's vibe turned crazy toxic. Bedin started screaming that the Crimson bloodline was literally demonic. To this grumpy boomer, nothing else mattered except painting them all as evil demons. Deculein casually dismantled this trash logic. He joked that if someone dropped sugar in water, Bedin would blindly call the glass pure sugar. This absolutely savage verbal beatdown left every single mage in the room completely speechless. Rumors immediately sparked that Deculein was a traitor. Glon demanded to know what on earth this crazy defense was meant to prove. Meanwhile, Sylvia was sweating bullets, totally certain that everyone shared her father's massive paranoia. They all assumed Deculein was playing some 5-dimensional chess. Plot twist, they were totally wrong. He was literally just stating basic facts. Sweating nervously, the assembly leader killed the debate, realizing this chaotic dumpster fire was going absolutely nowhere. He forcefully shelved the Crimson drama for later, desperately begging the council to just move on to the next agenda. The council quickly speed ran through the remaining boring topics. Days of absolute torture finally ended. Salty and fuming, Bedin aggressively shoulder-bumped past Deculein. Bedin thought he was the ultimate hero for the mages, but congratulations. He just successfully made everyone hate him even more. Next day, down in Burke's shopping district, Deculein and Alan were browsing a premium magical artifact shop. Deculein wanted to craft his custom staff right away, but was hopelessly stumped on what secondary materials to pair with his epic wood. While he was overthinking crafting recipes, Alan's eyes locked onto a very familiar face. He pointed her out as his absolute lifesaver, admitting he only survived the trip to the assembly thanks to her. It was Lilia, the badass security vice commander. What the heck was she doing, browsing the exact same nerdy shop? Paying back the favor, they dragged her to lunch. Over food, she politely thanked them before awkwardly killing the mood with serious business. She desperately needed answers to a few final questions to formally wrap up her annoying investigation. She asked for Knight Veron's status during the ambush. Deculein coldly delivered the grim reality. He was dead. Cue the most awkward dead silent meal ever. Lilia just kept secretly side-eyeing Deculein, wondering why this guy suddenly felt totally different. Flashback time. Her mind drifted back to a highly tense interrogation back in the Imperial Investigation Office. She was brutally lecturing Rockhark, promising him a one-way ticket to Hell Prison for slaughtering so many innocent mages. She glared, daring him to voice a single objection. But this psycho was totally zoning out, casually joking that all his explosions made the room awfully quiet. Annoyed, Lilia barked at him to just activate his ability already. When Rockhark finally sparked it, absolute chaos erupted in the room. Lilia called him a total moron, screaming about why he would willingly drag their bloodline's garbage reputation even lower. She ordered him to stop acting like an impulsive idiot, bluntly admitting she'd gladly execute him herself if his true identity leaked. She argued that fighting back would only hand their oppressors the perfect excuse to crush the Crimson-Born even harder. Lockhart scoffed. Did she honestly think playing nice would grant a Crimson-Born a peaceful life in this corrupt empire? Lilia deadpanned that going undercover was completely doable. After all, minus the whole cursed bloodline thing, they were basically just your average everyday citizens. Wrong, Lockhart shot back. Let's be real, they were literally born with terrifying demonic superpowers. Of course, the normies were going to freak out. Lilia sighed. Newsflash, most Crimson-Born didn't even have those scary demonic powers. Plus, attacking Deculein was a totally rookie move. Her squad already had the shady Yukline family under absolute hardcore surveillance. Lockhart raised an eyebrow. Was she plotting his murder next? Just watching for now, but Lilia aggressively promised that if that arrogant jerk kept acting up, she would happily delete him from existence. No hesitation. Lockhart shook his head. Kill Deculein. No way. That guy was the absolute gold standard of a true noble. Lilia's jaw completely dropped. Are you legally insane? Did he magically forget the massive mountain of crimes Deculein had casually committed? But Lockhart was hopelessly fanboying over Deculein's absolute elegance. He got literal chills, remembering Deculein sublimely defending the Crimson-Born as actual humans. Deculein had looked overwhelmingly confident, radiating pure, unstoppable boss energy. If more nobles shared that vibe, world peace was actually possible. Plus, Deculein literally spared his life after finding out his crimson identity. Total plot twist. Lilia, however, refused to ignore the cold hard facts. The Yukline ancestors were literal villains, spearheading the brutal genocide against their entire race. Lockhart awkwardly admitted he missed that history lesson, but punishing Deculein just for his family tree would make them just as evil as their oppressors. Lilia immediately snapped at him to stop playing the philosopher. Lockhart ignored her, brutally asking how long she could honestly fake her identity in such a high-stakes job. Forever is impossible, Lilia admitted. But hey, Crimson-Born didn't exactly walk around with glowing name tags or neon blood. What about our weird food allergies? He countered. Lilia shrugged. Just dodge the deadly snacks. Problem solved. Still, the Empire was a total mess. With a brand new emperor leveling up to the throne, they desperately needed to check his crimson tolerance levels. Until then, everyone had to stay absolutely completely invisible. She ordered Lockhart to zip it and enjoy his prison vacation. Flashback over Lilia still furiously questioned what made Deculein so supposedly special. A true noble, please. To her, he was just another arrogant, utterly punchable aristocratic clown. Mid-thought, heavy footsteps approached, bringing a totally overwhelming, eye-watering stench of cheap booze. Deculein glared coldly, demanding why this walking tavern was here. They had zero things to discuss. The annoying crasher Ehelm, the flashy blonde dude currently invading Deculein's personal space. Ehelm smirked, claiming his burning curiosity demanded answers right from the absolute bottom of Deculein's pitch-black villain heart. Cut to the terrified knights. Julie was so absolutely devastated by the incoming news, she desperately demanded an instant replay. Mission failure. Varan was officially dead. Her heart pounded as she frantically barked orders to prep everything right this second. Deculein had some serious explaining to do the millisecond he got back. Meanwhile, a spying Lilia intensely squinted at Ehelm. Was this drunkard from House Rewind? What kind of crazy drama was brewing between these two? Ehelm whined that Deculein was acting like a total loose cannon all conference, and it was driving him absolutely crazy. Why pull such a reckless stunt? He was literally risking massive beef with every single other noble house. Are you genuinely terrified of those Crimson-Born? He taunted. Hidden nearby, Lilia gasped, her mind racing to process this spicy plot twist. Ehelm dug up the receipts. Didn't Deculein previously swear to totally annihilate the Crimson-Born, calling them absolute trash? He even dramatically quoted Deculein's own edgy published article, declaring them completely unworthy of breathing the Empire's air. Then came the ultimate low blow. Was Deculein's shiny new assistant secretly a Crimson? Poor eavesdropping. Alan panicked, begging Ehelm to chill, but Deculein just calmly shushed his stressed assistant. Deculein ruthlessly roasted Ehelm, comparing his brain to literally expired rotten cheese. Of course, a garbage palate couldn't comprehend his grand masterpiece. Ehelm sneered. Only 6 months left until Deculein's big presentation. Or wait, maybe just 3 short months. Let's see how long this ridiculous fake personality holds up before the mask absolutely shatters. Dropping that mic, Ehelm swaggered off. Lilia was left utterly paralyzed. Her brain short-circuited. Did this villain actually just protect the Crimson-Born, tanking ultimate noble hatred for them? Trusting this absolute wildcard was ridiculously impossible. Perhaps that crazy old craftsman was right. Before ditching town, he commissioned a legendary staff. Boom, hidden side quest officially cleared. The outrageous requirements, massive, villainous infamy, and a heart that had miraculously turned pure. Next, supply insanely expensive top-tier crafting materials. Finally, endure 2 agonizing visits to the grumpy blacksmith. Reward unlocked. A rare exclusive coin and a masterpiece staff from Rockalok himself. Wait, a secret hidden quest cleared too. Back on the train, Betten glared daggers at them, radiating pure, unadulterated saltiness. Thank the heavens, no more death flags popped up. Almost home free. At the station, Alan aggressively stretched his cramped noodle-like limbs. He whined about cabin fever, absolutely desperate to see anything besides endless white snow. But surprise, Julie and her heavily armored fan club blocked the exit. She expressed polite relief for his survival. Obviously, the grim news about Varan had dropped. He could feel the crowd's collective glaring. They clearly wished he was the dead guy. Julie recited the fake news report, the heroic tale of their tragic teamwork. Then came the dread-inducing question. How exactly did Varan meet his end? Cue the painfully awkward dramatic silence. He almost spilled the tea. How her loyal knight went full psycho and tried to assassinate him, but looking at her fiercely earnest face. The brutal truth caught in his throat. Reality was way too toxic. Beneath that iron knight facade, she was totally fragile. Knowing her ridiculous savior complex, she would blame herself entirely for her subordinate's unhinged betrayal. So he swallowed the secret. Let them hate the villain if it kept her sane. Ding dong. The glorious announcement for the Empire train echoed like absolute salvation. He dodged the question like a pro, claiming the knight's final moments were merely emotional. She bowed deeply and vanished. Watching her go, he felt like an absolute idiot playing the martyr. Playing the bad guy honestly felt completely exhausting. Alan scoffed violently, calling the judging crowd a pack of brainless, irrational monkeys. We almost died too, yet they glare at you like the final boss. Ignoring the toxic vibes, he told Alan to chill. Suddenly, Sylvia popped out of nowhere, demanding explanations. Repaying what she shoved, a mysterious item at his chest, claiming her debts were cleared. A random book. She dashed off like a classic tsundere, leaving both guys totally bewildered. Whatever. His social battery was completely drained. He desperately needed his comfortable bed. Almost home. Meanwhile, Julie was fiercely doing paperwork regarding the catastrophic ambush. The official story, Professor Deculein and Varan formed a heroic dream team to save the day. Until round 2 happened, and the train literally flipped into oblivion. Varan plummeted to his doom, while the main character's luxury car miraculously dangled off a dramatic cliff. Conclusion. They both fought desperately against totally impossible odds. Though shattered by the loss, Julie offered a solemn salute to the survivors. While she mourned, annoying guards kept badgering her for juicy details, begging for any hidden clues about the shadowy mastermind behind the entire attack. But Julie just stared blankly into the abyss. Her most loyal knight was gone, vanishing like a bad dream. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, Uriel was absolutely vibrating with volcanic rage. That idiot brother had blindly swiped the family credit card again. We are literally broke. At this burning rate, we will be totally bankrupt in 2 months. Oops. Turns out legendary staffs cost a literal fortune. The classic consequence of spending first and asking questions later. The noble household was literally crumbling, and he desperately needed a clutch save. He promised Uriel a secret money-making scheme, cut to his massive vault of shiny, overpriced garbage previously bought just to flex their fake family wealth. Deculein casually told her to act like a proper lady. Cue Uriel, going absolutely feral, needing the butler to physically hold her back. Staring at the junk pile, Deculein pondered deeply. Why on earth did these useless trinkets drain the previous owner's energy so badly? Once dismissed as boring real-world art investments, his gamer brain had recently unlocked a glorious new perspective on this trash. He discovered a massive magical loophole to turn these dusty relics into cold, hard cash. Boom. He triggered the touch of Midas, then stared at his awkwardly outstretched hand, wondering why he struck such a cringy pose. Questioning his own sanity, he embraced the absolute madness anyway. Time to dump all this glowing junk back onto the auction house market. Summon an appraiser, he commanded. Panicking, Uriel screamed, asking if he was seriously liquidating everything. She shrieked that reselling now was financial suicide, whining that these dusty antiques wouldn't even fetch 50% of their original ridiculous price. Brushing off her epic meltdown, Deculein coolly ordered Roy to fetch an appraiser and transport. He squinted at a basic Western vase. Suddenly, the craftsmanship looked absurdly high tier. What kind of divine sorcery was this? This wasn't just clay, it was infused with raw, magical talent holding the legendary artisan's very soul. But thanks to his Midas touch hack, the vase's dormant potential absolutely shattered its limits. Flowers inside would achieve eternal youth. Even better, they would drop magical petals that completely spammed area of effect healing buffs. Deculein intensely analyzed the overpowered vase. Originally worth maybe 5 million tops, it was now a god-tier relic he wanted to hoard. Still, the moving trucks were already rolling out. Uriel practically tore her hair out, screaming if his master plan was speedrunning their noble family into total bankruptcy. Flashing a confident smirk, Deculein guaranteed a massive jackpot. Then, adjusting his expensive coat, he announced it was time to clock into work. Meanwhile, at the Elite Magic Academy, the Magic Exploration Club was intensely playing a totally non-magical card game. Boom, Ephraim swept the board again. 3 flawless victories left her entire crew utterly speechless. When a friend claimed it was close, Ephraim savagely roasted them for coping. Internally, though, this peaceful moment felt like pure fantasy. Born in a dirt-poor barony with zero formal schooling, her tower arrival sparked instant, relentless bullying from jealous snobs. Between toxic professors and endless drama, her life was a survival game, but hanging with true friends here felt perfectly right. Beaming brightly, Ephraim declared this quirky club was simply the best. Julia's sweat dropped, warning. They looked way too suspicious, slacking off. Suddenly, the doors flew open. A furious professor barged in, screaming at their laziness. Enter the ultimate buzzkills, Professor Relin and crony Beck. Beck immediately started yapping, whining that dirty commoners were wasting sacred tower space. Ephraim mentally groaned. These two bigots were human headaches. Relin mocked their entire existence aggressively, demanding to know what garbage activity they were doing. Ephraim sighed. The boss battle had arrived sooner than expected. Time to equip her thick skin and handle these elite bullies. Keeping her cool, she proudly stated their club was purely official, backed by fully approved paperwork. They were fully legit, Relin barked, demanding which idiot stamped their form. Then, locking eyes with Ephraim, his twisted face remembered his past grudge. You again, he sneered. Ephraim mentally prepared for the inevitable massive wave of toxic trash talk. He instantly lost his mind, shrieking at the arrogant brat to lower her filthy eyes and stop staring. Beck just smirked from the sidelines like a total creep. Relin then dared her to name the backer of this circus. In his narrow mind, absolutely zero respectable professors would ever greenlight such a pathetic gathering. Cue the boss music. Deculein materialized from the shadows, coldly stating he gave the stamp. Got a problem with that, he challenged. Even Ephraim's jaw dropped at the plot twist. Deculein casually complained that Relin's shrieking was polluting the hallway, repeating his terrifying question. He ruthlessly added that this loudmouth extra should have begged for his permission before daring to harass his club. Internally, Deculein was heavily sighing. This was already his second massive headache. Uriel had already drained his morning social battery, and now this ugly side character was ruining his clock-in time. Absolutely zero peace for the wicked. The ultimate backpedal. Relin began profusely sweating desperately, claiming he merely thought the room was terribly unfurnished for such glorious Imperial University mages. Seeing them in such poverty simply broke his fragile heart. He frantically swore to sponsor a complete luxury makeover. Deculein smirked, thanking Professor Relin for his consideration. He agreed the room felt ancient. Relin practically saluted, promising a VIP cleaning. Poor Beck practically coughed up his soul. The massive shock almost triggered an instant heart attack. Deculein threw shade, muttering that filthy roaches will always be roaches. With his aristocratic flex complete, he casually vanished. Beck stood frozen hilariously, trying to copy Deculein's alpha male aura. By the next class, the gossip mill was obsessing over the professor. The students whispered that his elite lectures were basically rarer than top-tier shiny pulls. Court hearings, dead mages on a train. The rumor mill was absolutely out of control, with wild conspiracy theories. Deculein silenced the room with a single glare. Boom class officially started. Today's menu, pure elements and magical interference. He explained the ultimate troll move. Magical interference is basically hacking another mage's spell right as they cast it. But forget boring theory, it was practical warm-up time. Alan hauled in a heavy box stuffed with glowing crystals. With a casual flick of magic, Deculein floated a shiny crystal to every single freshman. He dropped a massive bombshell. Each stone was worth 3,000 coins. He then casually suspended them mid-air using simple telekinesis. Their insane mission, hack his boss-level magic and steal the premium stones right out of the air. The winner keeps the cash. Broke Ephraim practically short-circuited. 3,000 coins, dollar signs literally flashed in her desperate money-starved eyes. Deculein stated absolute facts. Any mage worth their salt desperately needed to block outside interference. Defending your spell is survival, 101. They needed crazy reflexes to strike at the perfect moment. Just like warriors in a deathmatch, he challenged them to go plus ultra and figure out exactly where their true talents were hiding. Total chaos erupted. The classroom immediately transformed into a sweaty magical tug of war. Deculein secretly sweated. He totally faked moving a train before, but had only just crammed basic telekinesis into his brain. He used this activity as a secret training arc, cranking up his telekinesis to grind some much-needed skill points. Plus, it was a hilarious stress test. Could he solo 150 desperate freshmen trying to hack his spell? He wanted to see if his mana pool could tank that ridiculous aggro. Meanwhile, Ephorine was internally sobbing over her completely empty wallet. Academy gear cost an absolute fortune, and her tiny budget was already running on life support, so getting premium loot for free. Her jaw dropped. But she wasn't the only apex predator hunting that shiny prize. Sylvia glared like a hawk. She was fuming perfectly, remembering the professor praising Ephorine for being a totally self-taught underdog. Sylvia's competitive switch flipped. There was zero chance this elite genius would ever accept losing to a broke commoner. Invisible sparks flew. The two rivals locked into an intense, totally silent deathmatch for the ultimate prize. Around them, complete absolute carnage. The extras were practically foaming at the mouth, passing out from total mana depletion. Alan watched in pure terror. He was absolutely mind-blown by the professor's overpowered magical barrier. Deculein was literally chilling. Facing down 150 sweaty freshmen, he did not even drop a sweat. Nobody touched his firewall. Honestly, even Deculein was slightly shook. He never expected these kids to go totally goblin mode for some pocket change. Kids were literally popping blood vessels trying to win, but right in the middle of the massacre, an alert popped up. Someone was actually hacking his crystal. He casually glanced over. Boom, Sylvia had smashed the firewall and snatched first place. Ephorine was still aggressively sweating. Deculein smoothly clapped for Sylvia, declaring her the supreme winner of the round. It was totally the expected elite outcome. He figured nobody else stood a chance. But wait, another crystal suddenly got absolutely hijacked right under his nose. Enter the broke underdog Ephorine rocking. A dramatic nosebleed and shaking like a leaf, she somehow pulled off the impossible miracle. The rivalry tension skyrocketed to anime levels. Meanwhile, the poor background characters looked like actual zombies returning to the grave. One kid face-planted. Another lost his lunch, and someone coughed up a dramatic puddle of blood. Seeing this total wipeout, Deculein canceled the spell. He called the exhausted mob utterly pathetic, loudly declaring a much-needed break. He casually dropped that the janitors would swing by to mop up their hilariously messy classroom carnage. Julia looked completely mind-blown. She squealed that even if she sacrificed her life, she never could have hacked that spell. Ephorine gasped for air, weakly wheezing that she honestly thought she was going to die too. But mid-panic attack, she unlocked a galaxy brain epiphany. She admitted her telekinesis knowledge was basically zero, but when she slammed her mana against Deculein's godly magic, it literally felt like shattering a massive glass wall. Julia whined in total jealousy. Sylvia, watching the whole circus, was absolutely seething with rage. A failed commoner snatching second place, Sylvia's elite pride shattered. Worst of all, she fiercely knew Ephorine pulled this off with absolutely zero cheat codes or special treatment. Still, that wild rumor gnawed at her. Did Deculein actually stay late just to secretly tutor Ephorine? Sylvia's mind raced. Had the professor totally lied? What hidden potential did he actually see in that nobody? That commoner's arrogant attitude was seriously driving her absolutely crazy. Once the dust settled and the exhausted students caught their breath, Deculein finally revealed their hellish warm-up's true purpose. That brutal exercise. It was actually a taste of pure interference magic. He smirked, revealing that stopping his telekinesis was surprisingly simple. The two prodigies who succeeded already grasped the secret mana interference. But make no mistake, mana interference was a completely different beast from basic magical blocking. It required casting a perfectly timed counterspell to shatter the enemy's attack. Yet there was a glaring reason mages ignored it. A brave student asked, "They guessed you needed an insane amount of magic circles to pull it off." Bingo. Deculein confirmed it only worked against spells you had totally mastered inside out. Plus, in real combat, throwing up a quick shield or blasting back was infinitely more practical than this gigantic brain move. Even so, mastering this impossible art was absolutely crucial. Growth demands sacrifice. Only by facing crushing failures would they forge true magical strength. That meant endless agonizing practice sessions awaited them. The golden rule: instantly locate the enemy spell's central circuit to crush it. This vital core constantly shifted depending on the magic type, be it fiery destruction, healing, or raw elemental force. Basically, they had to totally read their opponent's mind mid-battle. You simply cannot break a deadly puzzle without understanding its foundational pieces. Deculein promised that surviving this mental torture now would make them unstoppable on future battlefields. So, he graciously offered a quick cheat sheet on spotting those magical weak points. Chalk clacked loudly as he sketched the notoriously destructive spell, Stormblade Piercer. He revealed how its volatile energy always erupted violently, straight from the dead center. The lecture dragged on. For 2 grueling hours, complex magical blueprints filled the chalkboard in rapid succession. Finally checking his watch, Deculein sighed. Despite the mountain of material left, their torture session was up. His trademark icy glare swept across the exhausted room. He coldly stated that dealing with amateurs was exhausting, so they had zero right to complain about his brutal methods. They were strictly on their own now. Oh, and a fun little heads up, the terrifying midterm and practical exams were rapidly approaching. They better burn today's brutal lesson into their brains if they wanted to survive. Jaws literally dropped to the floor as he casually strolled out, abandoning them entirely. Stretching her aching back, Julia dramatically groaned. How the heck were they supposed to self-study this nightmare? While Ephorine's brain felt totally fried, a spark of pure genius had quietly ignited within her mind. She couldn't exactly explain it, but the magical puzzle pieces were finally clicking into place. Suddenly, a snarky voice echoed behind them, mocking Ephorine as merely the absolute best of the pathetic commoners. Classic Beck. That arrogant noble never missed a chance to stir up petty drama. Julia sneered, reminding everyone how he even dragged Professor Relin into his messy grudges recently. Beck scoffed, blaming them for daring to stand out in a prestigious academy full of elites. He demanded to know how a total failure like Ephorine suddenly skyrocketed to second place. It clearly drove him insane. Keeping her cool, Ephorine smirked. Even if she shared her secrets, a chump like him could never copy her. But the wealthy bully dug his claws deeper, ruthlessly mocking her empty pockets and zero noble heritage. Then, he crossed a massive line. With a sleazy grin, he boldly accused her of actually seducing the professor. Her blood instantly boiled at that absolutely disgusting insult. Loving the fiery reaction, Beck pushed harder. He claimed the entire campus was gossiping about her shady midnight tutoring sessions. Furious, she screamed that it was all filthy lies, but Beck mercilessly doubled down on his ridiculous conspiracy theories. Did the mighty professor pity the homeless commoner? Was that priceless mana stone just a twisted charity gift from her favorite teacher? Right then, Ephorine. Mana sparked around her fingertips. Her patience was completely shredded. She growled, a final warning, one more word, and he was dead meat. But that arrogant jerk, Beck just smirked. Did this peasant actually think she could defeat him? Julia panicked. This was going to turn into a bloodbath. She desperately grabbed her bestie's arm. She begged her to drop it. Getting detention over a stuck-up noble totally wasn't worth the headache. Inhale. Exhale. Professor Deculein's annoying voice echoed in her head. Mages must remain elegant, she thanked Julia, sighing in defeat. Okay, maybe she lost her cool for a second. But arguing with a brain-dead moron like Beck was just a tragic waste of breath. Giving him the ultimate cold shoulder, the duo strutted right out the door. Meanwhile, Sylvia was watching like a hawk in the shadows. She only stuck around to enjoy the front-row seat to this messy academic drama. Later on the campus grounds, Ephorine's blood pressure finally dropped to normal. Now, how should she properly crush that annoying elitist insect? Her fists literally itched to punch his smug face. Dealing with these arrogant silver spoon nobles was seriously ruining her school life. Bam, lost in thought, she crashed straight into Sylvia, who immediately dragged her away for a super-secret chat. Ephorine braced herself. Great was this terrifying ice queen looking for a magical brawl too. But Sylvia skipped the trash talk. Staring her dead in the eye, she bluntly demanded the truth. Were she and Deculein having secret tutoring sessions? Ephorine internally screamed. Not this absurd gossip again. Why on earth was the whole academy obsessing over this crazy rumor? It was completely hilarious. She literally hated the professor's guts. Private lessons with that tyrant, she would rather swallow a live toad. Total fake news. She swore on her life she knew absolutely nothing. Sylvia's piercing gaze scanned her face. Surprisingly, this loudmouth actually seemed to be completely clueless. She bought the excuse. But before turning away, she dropped a massive bombshell. Deculein hadn't touched that research lab in 3 whole years. Not since Ephorine's father passed away. Ephorine scoffed. Obviously, that stuck-up professor could never finish that magical theorem alone. Her late dad was an absolute once-in-a-generation genius. But Sylvia's next words froze her blood. The notoriously lazy professor was actually visiting the lab again. For 3 straight months, he clocked in daily. He scrubbed the place, hired fresh lackeys, and hoarded top-tier magical gear. Did Ephorine realize what was brewing? Her mind completely short-circuited. Her jaw dropped. This made zero logical sense. Was that thieving professor trying to snatch her dad's life work again? But wait. He lacked the brainpower to decode it himself. Gulping down her rising panic, she slapped on a poker face and kept her mouth firmly glued shut. Shrugging casually, she claimed she didn't care about the villainous professor's boring daily hobbies. Seriously decoding Deculein's twisted brain was like trying to read a forbidden, completely cursed ancient grimoire. A rare tiny smirk crossed Sylvia's lips. Walking away, she tossed back a casual warning to stay fully alert about the shady lab situation. Fast forward a few days, the classroom buzzed with hyper energy. It was finally time for Deculein's dreaded and legendary practical combat exam. Stepping into the massive venue, Julia's eyes went wide as saucers. Were they seriously throwing down in this ridiculously huge arena? Aphirine's eyes narrowed suspiciously. What twisted evil game was their crazy professor cooking up? It was always this guy and his insanely dramatic, over-the-top theatrical nonsense. Right on cue, the absolute trash heap, Beck rudely shoved through the crowd, almost sending Julia flying into the dirt. Silence, Deculein's icy voice instantly froze the room. The real nightmare was starting. He coldly announced that today's menu was a brutal, full-scale practical combat test. Snap. Massive velvet curtains crashed down, exposing hundreds of staring spectators packed into the grandstands. With absolute bone-chilling calm, the professor declared this bloodbath would be broadcasted live. Aphirine gasped, completely horrified. Where did this mob come from? Deculein coldly instructed that they must now flaunt their destructive spells to the crowd. Total free-for-all, blast each other with whatever spells they desired. But there was one brutal catch. Every single fighter was forced to unleash at least 3 pure elemental magics. Victory or defeat meant nothing. This was a pure style check. The real grade depended on their magical swagger, creative spell combos, and flawless technical execution. His hawkish eyes would dissect every tiny move, violently judging their fatal flaws and magical potential. He smugly claimed this intense test would dramatically skyrocket all of their magical abilities. For safety, Professor Relin was stationed nearby to supervise the entire chaotic brawl. Broken bones. Relin would magically fix them. Because of this tiny safety net, all limiters were officially turned off. Go completely wild. Unlucky victim number 1 was Urian. He nervously stepped onto the sandy arena to point out his unfortunate dueling prey. Magic sparked, and the fierce battle began. Surprisingly, the opening tournament rounds progressed without any catastrophic explosions. Professor Relin nervously monitored safety, while Deculein critically judged every flaw. Initially, rookies froze during public combat, but soon, their true magical potential fiercely awakened. Stepping up, Sylvia utterly crushed her opponent without breaking a sweat. The arrogant noble Beck sneered at defeated commoners. "Give up on the magic tower and become our gardeners," he mocked. Hearing that Aphirine's blood boiled, those pampered idiots talked big, but Sylvia would absolutely obliterate them in battle. Pushing anger aside, she comforted defeated Perry. "You fought fiercely," she cheered. Next up was Beck himself. Predictably, the coward targeted Aphirine. He loved tormenting her, but little did he know Aphirine was thrilled for sweet payback. Beck smirked provocatively. "Ready to lose. Professor Deculein cannot save you now." Flashing an ironic smile, Aphirine scoffed. Still barking like a clueless, arrogant noble. "You are just an ugly, grumpy copycat. I will expose your truly pathetic magic." Beck scoffed, cruelly joking about finding her dead parents before launching a blazing fireball. But astoundingly, Aphirine stood there, completely unscathed. Beck panicked, his magic circle distorted. Her flawless defense completely neutralized his attack. Since entering the tower, she lived by one golden rule. Arrogant nobles desperately need a beating. Smirking, she summoned a massive earthen fist. Beck went flying out of bounds. He barely survived the lethal drop, saved only by Professor Relin's frantic emergency barrier. Standing victorious, Aphirine ruthlessly mocked the fallen noble. "How does absolute defeat taste?" Watching coldly, Deculein sighed. It ended instantly because some fool lacked total restraint. That was barely a duel. Seizing the moment, Aphirine boldly demanded a second chance. She argued perfectly. "I must demonstrate 3 elemental magic types to actually pass. But my opponent was too pathetic. I only used 1." Deculein begrudgingly agreed. Grading her on such a laughable opponent was completely illogical and deeply unfair. He permitted a new challenger. Without missing a beat, Aphirine pointed directly at Deculein. Gasps echoed loudly. Is she completely insane? Even Professor Relin's sweat dropped. He knew she was reckless but challenging a grand mage. Aphirine just grinned, absolutely anticipating this stunned reaction from everyone. Call her a lunatic, she did not care. This once-in-a-lifetime opportunity was hers. Facing Deculein was worth the school-wide ridicule. Even the icy professor's eyes widened slightly in sheer disbelief at her audacity. Deculein calmly ordered Relin to compose himself. He accepted her absurd challenge. Imposing 0 restrictions on her choice, he officially stepped into the arena as her opponent. But a legendary mage fighting a mere student was hardly a fair battle. Deculein laid down his rules. "I will not attack. Make me move 1 step to win." He would remain an immovable mountain. In the heavy silence, Aphirine's mana aggressively flared. Her heart pounded like war drums. She had craved this clash with Deculein forever. At his signal, she exploded into action immediately, unleashing a fierce gale spell. She knew the grim truth. Against his godlike power, her chances were basically zero. It was utter madness, but she needed to feel the absolute gap in their overwhelming power. He was her ultimate sworn enemy. Blending wind and fire, she unleashed a roaring flame tornado. Shockingly, the icy professor actually looked somewhat impressed. Pushing her limits, Ephraim injected earth magic. A massive volcanic dust cloud swallowed him whole. Rielan gaped in awe. Even genius Sylvia watched with absolute focus. Suddenly, a terrifying suppression shattered her spell. The blazing volcanic crust instantly disintegrated. Deculein stood there completely unfazed and unmoving. Her desperate follow-up projectiles simply vanished into nothingness. Not bad, Deculein smirked, acknowledging her hidden magical spark. Yet her flashy movements were her downfall. With a mere flick, he countered her massive spell. Ephraim froze. Zero mana response. Her body locked up completely, trapped by some invisible, overwhelming force. Her internal mana circuit was totally jammed. Deculein coldly declared her magic useless in his terrifying presence. Panic hit hard. How did this monster instantly seal away her entire magical core? But Ephraim was stubborn. Magic failed. Fine, she roared, charging fiercely to throw hands instead. A solid physical punch would definitely restore her crushed pride. Yeet. A simple finger flick launched her sky high. She crashed down hard, utterly wrecking the training floor. Deculein calmly analyzed her wild combo, mixing fire, howling wind, and earthly dust for a massive explosion. Her magical instincts were terrifyingly brilliant. Sadly, her newbie clumsiness ruined it. Controlling multiple raging elements required absolute mastery, not just raw power. The only reason she survived that elemental chaos was her overpowered innate talent, the vessel. Thanks to that artifact bracelet, she wielded every element. It was a legendary cheat-tier ability. Meanwhile, Deculein's inner modern soul was screaming, completely horrified by her monstrous potential. Maintaining his icy villain persona, he declared his absolute victory before casually dropping a shocking compliment. Ephraim sat dumbfounded, strangely moved. But Deculein just swished his cape away abruptly, ending the brutal exam. "Focus on your next exams," he ordered. The audience gossiped wildly. Did the cruel professor actually give praise? Ephraim's reputation skyrocketed. Beck fumed with jealous rage in the corner, while our battered heroine beamed brightly. Finally, a taste of sweet validation. Random background students totally fanboyed over her awesomely reckless battle style. Scene change. At the port, the legendary adventurer Ganesha impatiently awaited the ship. She grinned, nostalgic about old faces. Suddenly, the final passenger finally stepped off the gangway. It was Yura. Yes, the mysterious island girl. Actually, she was Yura, the main character's ex-girlfriend, now fully transmigrated. Facing Ganesha, traumatic memories of that fateful world-bending night flooded Yura's trembling mind. A sudden blinding flash had devoured her vision, short-circuiting her modern brain. Poof, soul was gone. Now she stood before Ganesha's intimidating squad. Meanwhile, the red-haired adventurer looked massively annoyed. Ganesha grumbled about her ruined quest. That arrogant jerk Deculein actually wanted to weaponize this clueless kid. Ding Yura's gamer senses tingled. These imposing figures looked ridiculously familiar to her. Holy crap, they were fictional characters from her own game design, now breathing heavily right before her. Ganesha leaned in, asking her name. Internally, Yura screamed. It was the legendary Red Bandolier Guild. The humid breeze. The hyper-realistic dirt smell. Reality sank in. She was totally trapped inside the damn game. Yep, her name was Yura now. The ultimate ironic punishment isekai'd into her own punishing fantasy code. With no other choice, she was essentially kidnapped by Ganesha, the globe's most famous thrill-seeker. Survival mode activated. Clinging to this overpowered NPC was absolutely her best bet for staying alive. She must survive and escape this glitchy nightmare. Meanwhile, Deculein was happily unboxing his newest shiny toy. Behold the Lock Wand. An ultra-rare masterpiece perfectly tailored for Deculein by the legendary Yukline master craftsman. System ping. Item class elite specialized magic wand. It secretly banked 500 mana points. Plus, it acted as a busted support circuit, supercharging every spell. Also, Deculein's snobby tastes were satisfied. The wand's dark, elegant design was simply breathtaking. Carved from legendary ironwood, this supreme material naturally boosted a mage's magical output to insane levels. In the world of crafting, ironwood reigned supreme as the undisputed king of magical timber. Broken feature alert. It possessed automatic AI learning. The wand literally memorized spells to minimize mana waste. And obviously, its luxurious drip perfectly matched Deculein's outrageously expensive, high-class noble standards. His obsessive trait literally demanded flawless, beautiful items. Jackpot. A hidden passive skill, Yukline lineage. It massively multiplied his holy damage against any demonic scum. The best part, it only cost 9 million. He literally sweated, thinking this insanely cheap price was a scam. But holding that sleek wand, It was worth way more than he paid. Before he could drool over his new toy, a servant popped up. Dinner was served. Being the prestigious Yukline family, a simple dinner meant an absolute mind-blowing royal banquet. Mid-bite Uriel casually dropped a bombshell. Our family vault is literally bursting with gold. Her tsundere pride hated admitting it, but their bank account was suddenly insanely fat. When she demanded answers, the butler smugly revealed the truth. Those dusty old antiques they auctioned off. Deculine's junk had basically gone viral. Every single piece sold for absolute astronomical fortunes. Uriel and the butler were practically floating on cloud nine. Remembering that golden auction, they realized they wouldn't have to stress over debts for decades. A literal fairy tale. The butler nudged him. Take that as her awkward thank you, since her stubborn pride would never let her say it to his face. He just smirked like a cool protagonist. That is wonderful. Blushing furiously, Uriel awkwardly coughed. Well, glad we are on the same page. Suddenly, Deculein ruined the mood. Your knife grip is atrocious. Snapping back to reality, she rolled her eyes. Oh, for the love of God. Later, safely locked in his office, Deculein internally screamed. This was a disaster. He violently cursed the original absolute trash tier, Deculein. Drafting the upcoming midterm exams was turning into an absolute nightmare of epic proportions. He was sweating bullets, desperately grinding his brain just to create decent test questions. But peeking at the original Deculein's draft, instant blood pressure spike, these absurd questions were physically impossible for any sane student to solve. The sheer toxic arrogance of that snob practically oozed from the exam paper. That jerk purposely designed a torture device to flaunt his giant ego. But the new Deculein, he absolutely refused to be that petty. He swore to craft the ultimate test. Challenging, yes, but actually designed to level up his students' brains. He wanted to trigger an absolute lightbulb moment. An epiphany that would unlock the true secrets of magic. Playing the professor role, he knew his butterfly effect could literally make or break these rookie mages' futures. Then he opened the final box of materials. He expected nothing but boring, mundane paperwork. Plot twist. Inside was a glowing stack of questions radiating a completely different genius aura. Someone else definitely wrote these, Ephraim's dad. Maybe brutally difficult, but an absolute masterpiece of academic design. They hooked your brain instantly, making you desperate to solve the magical puzzle. Sweating like a gamer, Deculein cracked the code. He grasped the hidden meanings and injected his own magical mana right into the parchment. The reaction was insane. A blinding rainbow erupted before him. Magic literally danced across the room. A mysterious hologram spawned. Deculein's jaw dropped. A perfect score would trigger this epic visual illustration as a hidden Easter egg. Each crazy color symbolized a different element, perfectly harmonized by the ultimate magical equation. Deculein grinned like a proud dad. This visual cheat code was flawless for teaching hardcore elemental magic. His pride took a tiny hilarious hit, though. Jealous that he hadn't invented this absolute masterpiece himself. But wait, who was the stunning woman glowing inside that holographic projection? Cut to the director's office. The taboo, crimson-born race sparked a massive debate. The post-Berkt meeting was absolute chaos. The director giggled, finding it absolutely hilarious how everyone's blind panic over the crimson actually made the debate 10 times spicier. A totally wild plot twist, especially considering Deculein's usually cold, snobby opinions. The entire faculty was visibly shook. Sitting before them was the ultimate boss, Adrienne, director of the Imperial Magic Tower. An insanely overpowered legend, literally the #1 draft pick to become the next Supreme Archmage. But hilariously, her chaotic gremlin energy completely destroyed her majestic, awe-inspiring reputation. Adrienne loved stalking the halls, desperately eavesdropping on juicy staff drama. But her hardcore addiction to silly gossip hid a massive mystical secret. Being a literal half-fairy perfectly explained her nuclear magic and purely chaotic energy. Haters constantly tried to cancel her over her bloodline, but she just flexed her power and ruled the academy flawlessly. Suddenly, the director dropped a bomb. Did you secretly team up with the heretics? Context check. Once a month, these elite professors had to survive a terrifying boardroom presentation, and unfortunately, today was Judgment Day. And just like clockwork in this comedy, Deculein became the absolute center of awkward, sweaty palm attention. Puffing his chest, he fired back with his classic villain line. Do you seriously think a magnificent Yukline would stoop so low just for cheap clout? But since our frosty professor pulled a no-show, he was just today's juicy gossip. A professor spilled the tea. The legendary Lady Luina crashed the Wizards' Council meeting. The director's eyes sparkled. Ah, Luina. The fierce rival who fought Deculein for head professor only to mysteriously rage quit after some super shady political backstabbing. Everyone assumed she was currently chilling in the kingdom. Adrienne leaned in, totally hooked. Why drop by out of nowhere? Professor Relin scoffed. Duh, offer her a sweet guaranteed job and she comes running. Snagging a spot in the Magic Tower meant hitting the absolute jackpot of perks. Plus, she's a total Kingdom VIP now, and honestly, with whispers of Deculein secretly backing the heretics, our mighty head professor is looking a little sus right now. The director smirked dangerously. If Luina officially returns, I'll definitely entertain the idea. The anti-Deculein fan club, the professors, cheered internally for her epic comeback. Meeting adjourned, Adrienne kicked the gossipers out, demanding they actually go write their midterm exams. Left alone, she giggled. Deculein was seriously slipping up on his villain game lately. Yet the monstrous test he just submitted, it was an absolute mind-bending masterpiece of torture. No way that stuck-up noble wrote this alone. She grinned, ready to stir the pot. Throwing Luina into this academic dumpster fire would be pure comedy gold. Fast forward a few days, the dreaded elemental magic midterm of doom was finally here. Students were already sweating bullets, traumatized by the sheer brutality of Deculein's previous exams. They sobbed that it was literally unsolvable. That sadist professor only breathed to make their miserable academic lives an absolute living nightmare. Poor Alan desperately tried doing damage control. He promised this wasn't a normal exam, begging the panicked crowd to just trust the totally bizarre format. Get this, mastering pure elemental magic would take 10 brutal days of survival. The absolute final deadline, midnight, on the very last Sunday of the school term. Welcome to your academic prison. Everyone gets a solitary cell to eat, sleep, and suffer. Total lockdown, no smuggling contraband and no leaking test sheets out. Technically, it was an open book nightmare. Julia stared blankly. A 10-day open book test. Just how brain-meltingly impossible were these questions? Ephraim groaned. Just passing last time was pure torture, and Deculein despises anything normal. But wait, Alan dropped one final massive bombshell. If some crazy genius scored perfectly, our beloved Ice Block head professor would write them a personal recommendation. The room gasped, a golden ticket from the top boss. That was literally priceless. Mage ranks went from bottom-tier rank 11 debutantes all the way to god-tier rank 1 Eternals. Climbing that sweaty academic ladder was insanely brutal. You couldn't just coast by attending class. You had to survive soul-crushing daily promotion tests that basically demanded your blood, sweat, and tears. Picture this, reaching rank 4 monarch status, flexing an almighty recommendation letter directly from Deculein. It was an ultimate cheat code. A guaranteed free pass to limitless magical power. Ephraim's gears started turning. A golden ticket from Deculein, her absolute worst enemy in existence. Gross, she loathed him. But wait. If she snatched that shiny letter, she could totally use it to crush his arrogant face later. She could leech his influence to climb higher than him. Oh, the sheer petty irony of that sounded absolutely delicious to her. Challenge accepted. She'd ace this exam just to spite him. Cue the mandatory supervillainous anime girl laughter echoing through the halls. Julia backed away from her crazed friend. Fast forward to day 4, Ephraim was officially losing her grip on reality. This test was totally cursed. 1 hour passed. Then 4. Then 10 agonizing hours. Every single problem dragged her deeper into an endless brain-frying labyrinth of utter magical confusion. Annoyingly, the questions were pure genius. Each one forced a torturous, soul-sucking journey to simply grasp the basic logic. But snapping that puzzle piece into place, holy manna, the dopamine hit was absolutely astronomical. Did that rigid jerk really write this masterpiece? Despite her melting brain, that sweet, sweet victory rush made quitting completely out of the question. She was going to rip that recommendation letter from his cold hands, whatever it takes. But right now, the final question had her stuck. She desperately needed some fresh oxygen before her skull literally exploded in that stuffy cell. Meanwhile, the class genius Sylvia was slumped on a garden bench outside, hyperventilating for survival. She whispered that she just beat one single problem traumatized, that it swallowed 13 miserable hours of her life. Her brain fried. Taking a breather, Alan's tempting words about that shiny recommendation letter intensely echoed. Meanwhile, Sylvia flexed her massive ego, basically declaring this brutal exam was just treating herself to a legendary flex. She smugly claimed any casual could ace this thing, and there was zero chance she would actually bomb her own promotion. Yet deep down, she secretly craved that top spot, not for basic bragging rights or letters, but to feed her immense pride. Every single puzzle felt like a mind-bending masterpiece. Cracking them violently required absolute pure genius. Clearing this boss rush meant she officially leveled up. Mid-thought Ephraim literally bumped into her annoying frenemy Sylvia outside. Sylvia, practically vibrating with nosiness, casually tried to interrogate her rival about her current exam progress. A hilarious standoff ensued over levels. Sylvia smugly flexed being on question 8, prompting a panicky Ephraim to quickly demand if she had beaten it. Sylvia scoffed, admitting she was sweating over that final boss. Ephraim groaned, praising her rival's ridiculous speed since she was agonizingly stuck on 7. Instantly, Sylvia's competitive radar sharply pinged. 7 was dangerously close. She narrowed her eyes heavily, suspecting Ephraim was bluffing, but instantly slapped those thoughts away. No time for conspiracies. She had to wildly speedrun back immediately. Ephraim teased if she was running away, but Sylvia coldly denied it. Break time was officially dead. Meanwhile, as students aggressively melted their brains over exams, Deculein ominously sensed a massive plot twist rapidly brewing on the horizon. The real tutorial ended here. Emperor Krebeim was tragically down to 1 HP. That old man was actually legendary for his cinnamon roll personality among commoners and his elite royal squad. He basically spent his reign playing peacekeeper between the church and throne, totally sparing the Crimson-born from toxic witch hunts. The million-dollar crisis now was fiercely debating which absolute menace would violently snatch his empty crown. This upcoming boss character was heavily destined to become the ultimate VIP, and easily the server's biggest migraine. Enter Sofian Ekater August von Jagus Gefrein, a ridiculously long-named tyrant, about to casually flip this entire server upside down. Morning Light officially triggered the final, brutal survival stage. Countless weak-willed scrubs had already rage-quit halfway through this intensely demonic academic marathon. The massive skill gap between tryhards and total casuals was painfully glaring. Honestly, scores aside, surviving that absolute nightmare was totally flexed by every single cadet like a shiny veteran badge. Shockingly, instead of throwing wild parties for freedom, these nerds actually sat down to deeply philosophize over their magical enlightenment. This wildly bizarre behavior genuinely terrified the thoroughly confused academy staff. Even snooty tower professors desperately begged to peek at the legendary exam. Down to the wire, the number of absolute mad lads still violently battling the final boss. Question number 8 was exactly 2. Ephraim and Sylvia Ephraim was violently losing her absolute mind over it. She fiercely hyped herself up, stubbornly, vowing to crack the code even if she chugged 50 toxic coffees. Just 5 more minutes of tunnel vision, one last desperate brain squeeze. Then bam, a blinding spark suddenly exploded. A pure galaxy brain epiphany violently unlocked inside. Assistant Alan scrambled, but omniscient Deculein was already ahead. The impossible final stage was officially cleared. Smirking knowingly, he kicked open the doors ready to dramatically praise his favorite overachiever, claiming he totally saw this coming. He praised Sylvia, who practically glowed with wild, overpowered elemental colors. The very room was practically bursting with chaotic pop-rock magical energy. It was stupidly gorgeous, a comforting wave that basically flashbanged the gloomy depression right out of every mage. An absolute legendary masterpiece. Ironically, despite being the evil mastermind behind this torture test, even Deculein silently admitted his own artistic skills could never physically paint a scene this utterly majestic. Deep inside that final exam puzzle, the pathetic, tragically untalented soul of his past life, Kim Woojin was secretly hiding. Woojin desperately dreamed of being a famous artist, sadly possessing zero actual talent. He just wanted to craft something violently beautiful to move souls. So he stubbornly grinded away, and that pathetic yearning eventually mutated into Deculein's flawless, aristocratic taste, infecting every single exam question with pure drip. Hence his hilarious absolute obsession with aesthetics. The ghost of that rejected art school loser was finally at peace. Snapping back, Deculein offered Sylvia his most majestic congratulations and a surprisingly genuine thanks. As his dramatic cape swished out, Sylvia stood utterly frozen, completely mesmerized by the neon magical dust still floating around. Honestly, she figured she owed him a massive thank you too. She was perfectly appreciating this insanely gorgeous light show. Suddenly, a total flashback violently hit her, all the toxic expectations drilled into her since childhood. Be a legendary archmage, they barked. Abuse your natural hacks, fulfill your annoying bloodline duty, and don't dare disappoint the crest. But nope, huge plot twist. She realized she actually wanted the archmage title simply because magic itself was so ridiculously, blindingly gorgeous to look at. Tragically, Ephraim's timer hit 0 before defeating the boss. Assistant Alan nervously patted her shoulder aggressively, swearing she was still an absolute legend anyway. Only 2 absolute prodigies reached that brain-melting final puzzle, and our girl was one of them. Ephraim eagerly asked if the genius Sylvia actually cracked it. Even Sylvia admitted that woman was an absolute monster. Suddenly, her grand revenge plot to snatch that recommendation letter and totally crush Deculein completely poofed right out of her exhausted brain. Now, only the scorching passion of a true magic nerd remained. Her immense academic pride was practically screaming at her to obliterate that ridiculously hard final puzzle. Sure, the official exam was totally over, but her stubbornness wouldn't quit. Grades didn't matter anymore. She was going to crack this magical headache. Alan flashed a warm smile, cheering for her totally hopeless dedication. By midnight, our completely drained heroine finally dragged herself out of that torturous magic tower. She sighed, thinking a flawless score might have actually softened the heavy blow of this massive magical hangover. Instead, her grand reward for surviving the day was just a freezing mattress, and probably a dorm door covered in absolutely annoying prank curses. But plot twist. Her friends were waiting to ambush her with massive cheers. Julia loudly declared their brains were completely fried, so a totally epic feast was absolutely mandatory. Afirin felt her heart literally melt at that sweet gesture. Spotting those watery eyes, Julia playfully panicked, asking if that totally brutal exam had actually broken their poor friend's spirit. But knowing the actual truth, Julia flashed a warm grin and rallied the entire squad to lovingly hype up our girl.